Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that one's just on. All right, it's 5 o'clock. I've just been watching my phone to make sure that we start on time. Welcome to City Council tonight. Our invocation is Shadon Bashir. Is he here tonight? I didn't think I saw him walk in. Cameron, you want to give us our invocation? Yeah, Cameron. Cameron's always ready to pray.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this wonderful day that we have to be able to meet together, to participate and listen as City Council and Mayor meet together to go over this the city business. Father, we are grateful for Thy Spirit and Thy help in the circumstances of today and the difficulties. We are grateful for the leaders of this city and the thought and the process that they go through to be able to make good decisions. We are grateful, Father, for this wonderful city that we live in, and pray that Thou wilt help us as citizens, that we might be kind and considerate to each other, to our neighbors, and to those visiting. We are grateful, Father, for the opportunity that we have to get to know each other from different walks of life. We pray that as we go through this meeting tonight, that we might be able to listen and understand and look at the different perspectives of the items on the agenda. We love Thee and are grateful for all that we have. We say these things in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Cameron's not only a good prayer, he's our Public Works Director. So happy that he filled in. Natalie, you want to lead us in the pledge? Thank you, Natalie. So we just have one pre-agenda item, and it is for Amateur Radio Week. And I asked Greg to read it, and he said, hey, I have an amateur radio license. So,
Yeah, that'd be KB7LFV is my call sign. So I'm happy to read this proclamation. It says, whereas the Dixie Amateur Radio Club was founded in St. George in 1976 and has been active in city-sponsored events for 46 years, and whereas amateur radio has continued to provide a bridge between people, societies, and countries by creating friendships and the sharing of ideas, and whereas amateur radio operators have also provided countless hours of community service, both in emergencies and to other local organizations throughout these decades, and whereas amateur radio services are provided wholly uncompensated, and whereas federally licensed amateur operators have further demonstrated their value in public assistance by providing radio communications at their own expense for many events held in St. George, including the Huntsman Senior Games, the Rhino Rally, and almost 40 years of being the primary communications media for the St. George Marathon. And whereas the City of St. George recognizes and appreciates the diligence of these amateur radio operators who also serve as members of the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, serving the citizens of Washington County. And whereas the Dixie Amateur Radio Club 37th Annual Field Day exercise will take place on June 25th through 26th, 2022, and is a North American-wide 24-hour emergency preparedness exercise and demonstration of the radio amateur's skills and readiness to provide self-supporting communications without further infrastructure being required. Now therefore, I, Michelle Randall, Mayor, along with the City Council of the City of St. George, Utah, do hereby proclaim June 21st through the 27th, 2022, as Amateur Radio Week.
Rick, did you want to say something? That's perfectly fine.
Madam Mayor, Council, and ladies and gentlemen, I don't have a 20-page, so don't worry. 37 years ago in 1985, two young men who had met because of their love of amateur radio, or ham radio as it's called, decided they were going to participate in a contest sponsored by the American Radio Relay League. This contest is known as Field Day. It requires that participants set up portable antennas, portable stations, and emergency power, and operate for 24 hours continuous over one weekend. One of these hams is James Cowley, who still lives out in Ivins and is very active in amateur radio. The other ham is me. 37 years of doing this. We participate in Field Day for many reasons. One, it's just fun. That's two, to hone our emergency communication skills. Three, to further camaraderie with club members, allowing us to work together. We expect to see you at a club meeting here very soon. You will all receive a letter very soon. I gave them all to Krista, inviting you to our Field Day site and seeing what we can do in an emergency situation. We also invite you to come work a station and talk to stations possibly all around the world. We would love to see you. We will be operating from noon Saturday, June 25th to noon Sunday, June 26th. Any time is fine to stop by, even overnight. That's fine. We'd love to have you. The Dixie Amateur Radio Club provides communication to St. George and surrounding communities when needed. Where is this item in your budget? There is none. We do this with no thoughts of remuneration, from any agency or person. Our equipment, antennas, and auxiliary equipment is purchased with our own money. We know that we are not the first responders. We know that we will probably be on the back lines in an emergency, passing what we call health and welfare traffic. But we are happy to do so whenever we are called upon. We await your call during emergencies and situations such as power failures, floods, etc. Our systems are robust and we can operate independent of the power mains if required. Thank you for this honor, and we look forward to welcoming you to our Field Day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. Greg, will you go down and give him the proclamation, and David will take a picture.
Love what you're doing.
Thank you. Really cool. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Adam, any changes to the consent calendar?
No changes.
Council, is there any item you want to pull off the consent calendar for further discussion?
No, Mayor, but I did read the minutes, and there were just 2 alterations to the minutes on 6/2/22, page 6, line 8. There were just 2 names that were wrong, and Christina's already changed them. So it was supposed to read Pete Ronley and read Betty Hackett, and that's already been changed. So I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar as written with those changes.
I'll second that.
Motion by Danielle, seconded by Greg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Trevor,
Waiting for my turn. So,
state your name for the record.
so I'm Trevor Coombs. I'm the Administrative Service Director for the city, oversee the utilities and finance office for the city. So item 2 is a public hearing regarding the non-reciprocal transfers for the unbilled utility services. State statute requires that we provide the public an opportunity to take comment and also review this practice of unbilling utility services to the city. As you're aware, the city owns and operates their own utility companies in the power companies, water companies, wastewater companies, and also secondary irrigation. And it's been the practice since the beginning of those incorporations of those companies that services that are rendered to the city directly that generally benefit the public through the city, that we have not charged ourselves for those services. Some of the services that are included that benefit some of the city facilities are police and fire stations, city cemeteries, city golf courses, city parks, city swimming pools, public right-of-ways, the wells and the pump stations that generate the water throughout the community, are just to name a few of some of the facilities that benefit from these unbilled services. For the current fiscal year, which will end June 30th, the total estimated unbilled services for the water and secondary services is approximately $1.2 million. Of this amount, the biggest beneficiaries of this unbilled water service is our parks, which is about 50% of that amount. The unbilled electrical service is $1.4 million. Of this, the biggest beneficiary of the electrical services is our water company that uses the power to pull the water out of our wells and to circulate the water through our water systems. Another portion of the unbilled is our wastewater service, and that is $54,000. And of that, the biggest beneficiary is our parks for the wastewater services at those locations. All these costs that I've been indicated here are already built into the current rates that our customers pay for the utility service. So there is no rate increases related to these unbills. It's been a practice, like I mentioned before, that the city it's already included in our operating costs of those. But we do estimate that our consumers, it costs about $2.40 per month for those unbilled services. It's of the opinion of our management team and as prior management of the city that this way of doing service is the most efficient way of doing it. If the unbilled services were actually billed directly to the city for the city's services they offer, we would have to increase property taxes or increase other fees or levies to cover those costs in our general funds. And we felt like this is the most efficient way to continue the operations of providing that service. We do monitor the consumptions on our utility services, on these unbilled utility services, My office goes through a detailed analysis each month on the consumptions, and as well as the departments that benefit from these unbilled services. I'm happy to let you know that from last year's estimated cost to this year's estimated cost, we have seen a 30-cent savings per month in that conservation that we've done, in addition to the growth that we've seen on our base customer size. Some of the efforts that we have tried to do to get the word out about these unbilled services, as we do every year, is we provide over 40,000 emails with that and insert flyers that goes out with the utility bills through the month of May and also in through June up to this date. In addition to that, we provide links on those flyers to our website that has more detailed information that our customers and citizens can go to learn more about this program. And we've also tried to use social media and Facebook to put summaries and also links to those websites. And we provide our phone numbers and emails so they can contact us. I haven't heard anything, I haven't received any comments from the public regarding the unbilled services. But as you know, this is the opportunity for the public, if they want to make comment or ask questions regarding the unbilled services. This is a public hearing. No action is needed by the council at this time, but it's just an opportunity for us to present the practice that we do with the unbilled, since it's our companies that we monitor and operate and run, and that provides a benefit to the city. So. Hopefully that makes sense. Any questions?
Trevor, I just have a quick question. On the 1.2 million that you mentioned with water, you mentioned 50% goes to parks. Is the other 50% golf courses? Is golf included in with the parks? What would be the percentage toward golf courses?
Great question. So the next biggest one is golf. That is 39%. Majority of their water that is used is secondary water. And then the other ones are I mean, there's a list of facilities that use it, but parks at 50% and then golfs at 39% are by far the largest uses of that. And most of their water is used, as you know, is secondary water. We try to use the secondary water wherever possible, along with the cemeteries and so forth like that. Yeah, good question.
Trevor, what's your measurement? You said saving 30 cents. What's 30 cents per, what's the measurement on that?
So so that came out of our calculations based upon the total consumption that we've seen over water, energy, wastewater, all of those things that we do for unbilled. We saw a reduction in the cost related to saving the water. Like, for example, we've removed a lot of sod in right-of-ways in our golf areas, parks, and so forth. And part of those measures helped reduce the consumption, which in return, when we do the calculation of what it would cost to pay for it, reduces the cost of those things. In addition to that, because it's factored upon the number of customers we have in our utility base, we are growing in that utility base. And so as we grow, that also, the growth related to the customer base also shows that cost being reduced.
So you're saying 30 cents per month per customer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, in 2021, the estimated cost was $2.70. This year, it's estimated at $2.40.
Oh, it's on. So we also have parks in Dixie Power. So do we pay them separately for the utilities in those parks for the power?
Yeah, so if it's not on city facilities, like city power through our companies, then yes, we pay for power through Dixie Power and so forth. We also pay, like I said, we also pay for some power services where it may not be, we may not see a direct nexus between the general population. We do pay for our own power or water or other services like that. We just, like I said, we could charge through the property taxes or charge through increased rec center fees or other things, but how prior management has done it and how we have also felt this is the most efficient way to to mitigate it. It is still being paid for. It is still part of our overall cost of doing business in those companies, but this is how it's been handled.
But it's separate than the $2.40. That's a different charge, right?
Right, that's correct, yeah.
Just to make a comment, I like the way you're doing it, and I like that you're keeping track of everything that you do, great records on what you do, and also, the conservation efforts that you've achieved. It's great. So just all positive.
Thank you, Trevor.
And I will say this, if any of you during your public comment, Trevor is very concerned about messaging in the community, and I know he does a great job of sending out the utility bills, trying to send emails out to the community. So if any of you have a way of sharing how we best communicate with you with notices, let us know, because I know that is a concern of Trevor's. Are you open up your utility bill? Are you open up that email to see what's going on in the city? Because communication is very important to our residents, and I know that's a focus of his, even though he's doing all this other stuff, is he's trying to communicate with that. So if you're going to comment tonight and you have a better way of us communicating with you, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, one of the important things that we try and do, part of my office in administrative service is also the customer service arm of the city, and we really want to engage more with our citizens. We feel it's better government in doing that. We feel more heads are better than one, and a lot of our citizens have great information and are helpful in that regard. We do have neighborhood meetings that, we take the council meetings to the communities, which are also very beneficial as we're trying to seek information about things, but I agree. Thank you for that.
So with that being said, I'll open up the public hearing. If anybody's come to comment on the transfers for unbilled utility services, and when you come to the mic, need you to say your name and spell your last name for Christina, because sometimes we're not getting the names right. So anybody who's come to comment on item number 2. Yeah. Danielle.
Dan Cooper, Cooper. So I'm looking at this notice of public hearings, and it says, however, the 22-23 budget does include proposed rate increase due to increased costs from suppliers and other infrastructure needs. And this, of course, probably will go into the entire budget. And see, the budget went up 35% last year, $4 million for the golf carts, and it's over 50% right now, and it's something like 500 plus million for less than 94,000 people. All I see is tax and spend. A better proposal, I think, would be to divest ourselves from the electric company. There's private company here. There's private companies here. Why are we in competition with private companies? Why are we in competition with private golf courses? I think we need to stop the socialistic fascist program and start following the Constitution. It's a good program. It built the greatest country in the world, and we've all taken oaths to it sooner or later. So that's basically what I have to say, because if we get rid of the golf courses and get rid of the electric company, there'll be a great modification. Think about, you pay employees and benefits, retirement, and then you'll pick up their votes because they won't do anything to jeopardize their job. It's kind of like buying votes. It's kind of like what we're going to do is just make sure you vote for us. And see, I have a problem with that. I know you can buy anything in this world with money. I know people are the cheapest of all possible things you can buy. But I think we need to step up and be a little better. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert. Oh, wait. Anybody else want to comment on the unbilled utilities? If not, I will close the public hearing. And now, Robert.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Robert Myers, Budget Manager for the city. So item 3 is to hold a public hearing to review and take comments on the proposed transfers from our enterprise funds to our other funds, included as part of the preliminary 22-23 budget. Each year, as part of the budget process, staff calculates the cost of providing administrative and overhead support to our enterprise funds for the purpose of determining an appropriate and a fair amount that the enterprise fund should reimburse the general fund for those services. The administrative and overhead support are paid by the general fund and includes utility billing, payment collection, customer service functions, as well as indirect costs such as our human resources department, technology department, fleet maintenance, and other administrative services that we provide in support of those departments. Sharing in these costs is a benefit to our enterprise funds as it negates the need for them to directly hire personnel to provide those services, to directly hire HR personnel, technology personnel, fleet personnel, et cetera. So there's a benefit to them, and it saves from having to directly hire that, so it saves them in cost as we provide those services. In addition to calculating the cost of providing administrative and overhead services, we also look at the cost of capital projects that we propose in the budget, and we identify projects that have a direct benefit to our enterprise funds, and we also ask them to help reimburse for their fair share of those costs as well. In support of calculating these transfers, we develop an annual cost allocation worksheet that we include in the budget, and we've also included as part of our mailer to our public that identifies in detail by each department and service how we've split up those costs and how we're charging those to the enterprise funds. And if you've noticed as you looked at that, the amount of cost that we identified related to providing those services, we're actually charging a little bit less to our enterprise funds than what we could based on that cost allocation plan. This year's total proposed transfer is $6.4 million for administrative and overhead costs and $5.8 million for capital projects. And tonight's item is to hold a public hearing on our enterprise funds transfers, including the 23 budget, and there's no action required by City Council.
Questions for Robert? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing for those who have come to comment on the transfers from the enterprise funds. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. No action needed, so we will move to item number 4. Robert, you're back up.
And Mayor, I'm gonna give an introduction to this prior to Robert coming up. So, Mayor and Council, good evening. This is actually our 7th public meeting on the fiscal year 23 budget. This brief message that I'm going to share, I stated it 2 weeks ago at our previous public hearing, and just for the benefit of those in attendance, I'll repeat in large manner this message again. So we have been working on the FY23 budget since about January. We've been meeting with the council, talking with you about your priorities, about important capital projects for maintaining and building city infrastructure, and reviewing departmental needs and requests. The tentative budget's been available to the public on our website since May 5th, and tonight we have another opportunity to hear from the public. This is a large budget, totaling nearly $503 million. As a regional hub, we provide many services that other communities our size do not. Those services cost a lot of money. Our budget includes the airport, the regional wastewater treatment plant, the animal shelter, regional 911 dispatch, Suntran, the largest municipal utility in the state, and St. George Power, just to name a few. There are many more. We also have a parks and recreation system that is second to none. We do a lot for our residents, and I'm the first to admit there's always room for improvement, but I think for the most part we do it well. We take pride in serving our community. The quality of life we enjoy here in St. George has made us one of the fastest growing cities in the country. People want to be here. They want to be part of what's happening in St. George. It's exciting. It's also challenging for us as we try to meet those demands. So yes, the tentative budget is a large dollar amount. We provide many services, and I still think that our residents get a good value for their money. I want to give you a very high-level breakdown of the budget. So first of all, we've discussed a little bit our utility funds. We have in our budget enterprise funds. These are business-type activities, largely the city utilities. So approximately 40%, 2/5 of the budget, is our utility funds. So this is your water, your wastewater, and of course St. George Power, along with storm drain and a few others. So 39% of the budget, $200 million, is just to fund and operate our utility services. Our utilities are nonprofit, not-for-profit companies. They do certainly fall under the overall umbrella of St. George City Corporation. And because they are nonprofit, every every dollar that we generate in revenue through those utility services is invested back into our utility systems. So it's maintaining and operating and expanding those utility services. And those are funded primarily through user fees, so your monthly utility rates, and then some impact fees as well. Another third of our total budget in fiscal year 2023 is projected to be for capital projects. So 1 out of every $3, $170 million of the $503 million total budget is just to build and maintain our infrastructure. So some of this involves the use of impact fees. I've mentioned those, but impact fees are monies that we collect at the time a building permit is issued to make sure that new growth pays for itself. And we have all kinds of impact fees. We have park impact fees, we have electric impact fees, water impact fees. But again, the idea behind the impact fees is to fund those projects that are necessary for the new growth. Of that $170 million amount, that's for capital projects. I'm going to identify a few of the things that are happening. So those capital projects include $31 million worth of improvements to our street network. So that's repaving roads, other improvements to our streets, 6 new traffic signals, a $13 million storm drain project on 3000 East. In fact, we've already started that. That will continue into FY23. Once that's done, that allows us to expand 3000 East all the way down. So we'll have that 5-lane road all the way down to the south end of 3000 East. That's an area of our city that's experienced a lot of growth. So that's an important project. There are new fire stations in the budget. There's the conversion of the Little Valley soccer fields to artificial turf. We've actually managed to get that project funded largely with outside dollars. That project will also save nearly 18 million gallons of water annually for the city. So that's a big deal. There are 2 large park projects that we will be using park impact funds to construct this year. That's phase 1 of the Curly Hollow Regional Park in the Tonnequint neighborhood, and then an expansion to our Little Valley Pickleball Complex. Now, impact fees, and in this case, park impact fees, are restricted. So they're collected for the purpose of building infrastructure for parks and recreation. We do not have the ability to reallocate those towards any other service, and they can't be used for maintenance either. They are only to be used to construct new facilities, and that's why we collect those. In addition, we have $68 million worth of water and sewer infrastructure projects. One of the most important projects in that group is the Graveyard Wash Secondary Irrigation Project. Until we bid that out, we don't quite have a final dollar amount. It's likely to be $18 million would be our best guess at this point. $10 million of that is going to be funded by the state of Utah. We also have one more capital project that I'll mention, which is a $16 million expansion of the airport terminal apron. And that allows us to expand the terminal, accommodate more aircraft, and also allow or add a greater number of destinations that are served by our airport. That project is funded nearly entirely by the Federal Aviation Administration, and then the remainder is covered by passenger facility charges. So when you fly in or out of the airport, you pay a small fee, and that's how that particular project is going to be funded. The city's general fund is what you typically think of in those traditional municipal services. That makes up about 20% of the budget. So $100 million of the $503 million total budget is the general fund. And this is where we do those things that really impact a lot of the day-to-day of our residents' lives. So this is your public safety, police, fire, emergency 911 dispatch. It's planning and zoning, it's building permits and inspections, it's golf, it's legal services, it's streets, it's administration. Those are all activities that are funded through the general fund. That's typically where the local taxes are designated. So your sales tax, your property tax. When we typically think about us as taxpayers paying to our local government, it's almost entirely captured in the general fund. And then finally, 6% of the total budget is for a lot of miscellaneous funds. There's a lot of little ones in there. There's over 70 funds that we administer. Think of those funds as like the different accounts that you might have at your local bank. You've got a checking account, you've got a savings account, maybe you've got a money market account. So we also, in our fund accounting, have numerous funds, and about 6% of that would be things like our RDAs, CDBG, Suntran, and then some others. So The council certainly has heard, and I would expect that many in attendance tonight have heard, that a property tax increase for public safety has been proposed by staff, and that's correct. If that property tax is approved, an increase in the rate, that total budget would increase from $503 million to $506 million. So less than 1% of the tentative budget. But one thing that I would want to clarify is that that tax increase is entirely for public safety. And our staff are going to go into detail here in a few minutes and outline the plan that we've come up with to address our public safety needs. I will say this. This is my best professional opinion that I can give you in the 4.5 years that I've worked for the city very closely with our public safety personnel. First of all, they're the absolute best of the best. I have all the confidence in the world in our police, fire, and dispatchers. They do a phenomenal job for our community. We do need to invest in our public safety departments. It's definitely timed. Our staff are overwhelmed. They need help and they need additional resources. That's not any criticism of the job that they do. It's just a reflection of, well, many things, but particularly the growth we've experienced over many years. And they need additional resources. So we have come up with a multi-year plan. We call it Save St. George. And we're going to get into that in a minute, but I think it's a good plan. I fully endorse it. And I promise you that we wouldn't be proposing a property tax increase if we did not think that it was absolutely necessary. We could debate the merits of the strategy that we've employed when it comes to approaching our property tax rates, and that is for the last 35 years we have not increased our property tax rates. 35 years we've gone without asking
The city of St. George.
the city of St. George, correct. Yeah, there have been increases to property taxes in southern Utah and in St. George by other taxing entities, but not the city of St. George. We haven't done that for 35 years. Again, we could debate that strategy, but one of the things that I think is most important when we consider our property tax rate is that it's set up by the state of Utah to not be responsive to inflation. So over the course of 35 years, we've lost a significant amount of purchasing power. The value of the dollars that are brought in through property taxes have decreased year after year after year after year, while the cost of providing those services has gone up. Of course, obviously this represents a tough decision for the council and for our organization as we consider how we continue to provide those services and how we do so at a level that our residents would expect and that benefits them. I do think as we go through the Save St. George plan, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to see what the actual dollar amount is. It comes out to about $4.77, and I'll look at our budget team to make sure I got that exactly right. About $4.77 per month for the average primary residence in St. George. Again, this is only an increase on the St. George portion of your total property tax bill. Again, our budget staff are going to go into detail on that to make sure that that's been explained. But council, thank you, sincerely, thank you for your guidance to this point in the process. There's a lot of work, as you know, that goes into coming up with a budget. I want to tell our budget staff thank you for the many, many long hours you've put in to get this project done. And of course, there's still work to do. And we look forward to additional guidance from the council. Ultimately, council, this budget needs to reflect your policy priorities. And with that, I'll turn the time over to our budget team for items 4 and 5.
Well, hello again, Mayor and Council. So let me pull up my presentation here real quick. And again, Robert Myers, our budget manager for the city. So again, item 4 is to hold a public hearing on the fiscal year 22-23 budget. This will be our second public hearing that we have held as part of our budget process. And at the conclusion of the public hearing, for the council to consider adoption of a resolution that would adopt the tentative budget. I wouldn't be adopting the final budget, we'd be adopting the tentative budget. So looking at the overall 22-23 budget, the budget's $502 million across all funds and reflects an increase from the 22 budget of about $78 million. This year's budget reflects a focus around addressing critical needs in our public safety and in our infrastructure, as Adam highlighted. These investments include areas added that will have significant increases in our public safety staffing, in their equipment, in their vehicles, and in their compensation. In addition, we'll also have road improvements, new fire stations, and water conservation related projects that will have a direct benefit to our residents. and reflects the city's long-term investment in the community. This budget also proposes some increases in fees and utility rates due to the rising cost of providing services. Due to the impact that we've seen on inflation on providing services, we'll be increasing some of those fees to help offset that. And along with the budget's focus on public safety in the 23 budget, we've also spent a significant amount of time in developing a 5-year plan, which we call the Safe St. George Plan, that looks to the long term on the investments that we need to make in public safety to help keep St. George a great place to live. And then we'll be covering those in the coming slides. So next I wanted to look at kind of the overall budget. Again, kind of touch on some of the things that Adam mentioned. So when you look at the overall budget, like Adam said, it's a large budget, and there's kind of 3 primary reasons why the city has such a large budget. First, the city is a regional hub for the area, and because of this, we provide a large number of services beyond what a typical city provides, including our regional wastewater treatment plant, our regional airport, our regional 911 dispatch, SunTran, St. George Power, just to name a few. And because of that, that obviously has a direct impact on the size of the city's budget with all those additional services that we provide beyond just what a typical city provides. Second, the community continues to see significant growth in our population as people have been excited to move here, and we just continue to see a fast growth. When you look at the 2020 census, we're actually the fastest growing city in the nation. So we've seen tremendous growth. And with that growth comes additional service demands, and additional infrastructure needs to meet those service demands. And so that's reflected in this year's budget. And then finally, like most of us have seen, supply chain issues and other major impacts related to that have had a major impact on our ability to start and complete projects on time and within original project estimates. And because of this, there's about $50 million in projects that were included in the 22 budget that will be rolling into the 23 budget for infrastructure items and other needs that we weren't able to get to this year, that we need to roll into 23 so we can complete those projects. When you look at the overall budget as compared to the 22 budget, again, $78 million increase, and I want to talk a little bit about where that increase is in the budget and why that increase is there. So the chart on the right shows you a breakout of the budget by the city funds and the growth in the different city funds as compared to the 22 adopted budget. $24 million of the growth was seen in the city's in this year's budget in our enterprise funds. These funds are for the city's utilities that we provide to our residents. Like Adam said, this includes our water service, wastewater treatment, our regional wastewater treatment plant, and St. George Power. These funds reflect 39% of the overall budget and are 100% paid for by user fees for these services. The majority of the increase proposed in these funds is going towards water system infrastructure improvements, including a new reservoir for the secondary irrigation in the Graveyard Wash, and multiple system improvements with new and replacement water tanks, new lines, and continued expansion of the wastewater treatment plant that supports water and many other projects that support water conservation. $41 million of growth in the budget is in our capital project funds. These funds are used for building and maintaining city infrastructure. These funds reflect 34% of the overall budget and are paid for from a mixture of sources, including impact fees on new growth, federal grants, the highway sales tax, and city reserves. Significant areas of increase include 2 new fire stations, including a new fire station in the Desert Canyon area and relocation of the fire station headquarters to downtown. Road and drainage system improvements, including continuation of the 3000 East Road and drainage system project, and the first phase of extending 1450 South to the Dixie Center area or Crosby Lane. And significant improvements are including city facilities, including the apron expansion at the airport, which Adam talked about, which is a sizable project, and the majority of that project is paid through federal funds. $11 million of the budget in growth in the budget is in our general fund. The general fund is used to pay for the majority of services that our citizens think about when they think about the services the city provides, and that includes our police, fire, 911 dispatch, street maintenance, parks and trails maintenance, and many other services. The general fund reflects 20% of the overall budget, and it is the city's primary tax-supported fund, as it receives the majority of property taxes and sales taxes for the city. When you look at the increase in the 23 budget, a large portion of the increase in our general fund is related to the Safe St. George plan, as over $5 million is included for 26 new public safety positions, the equipment and vehicles necessary to get those positions up and running. The other major area of increase is in our park system, with several system improvements proposed, including conversion of the artificial turf at the Little Valley soccer fields to artificial turf, which will be a 50-50 shared cost with the county, Phase 1 of the Bloomington Hills Park renovation project, improvements at Pioneer Park, replacement of the restrooms at Soundtown Park, and replacement of the carpeting at Thunder Junction. When you look at the consolidated budget for 23 as compared to the 3-year average of the city's budget, you can see that 45% of our budget is in capital outlays, which is equipment, infrastructure, building maintenance, and so on. When you look at the 3-year average of about 13%, again, the budget just reflects a significant investment in our infrastructure, significantly higher than the average year. Looking at the general fund budget is $102.9 million, again, 20% of the overall budget. It's broken out amongst the various services shown in the pie chart on the right, and as you can see, the largest portion of our budget in the general fund goes towards public safety, which is about 39% of our expenses in the general fund. The general fund has the major highlights include 35 new positions recommended based on the demand seen by our departments. 26 of those are in public safety for the first year of the Safe St. George plan, and significant funding in our capital improvements with $18 million planned in the general fund for parks system improvements, public safety improvements, and so on. And again, $6.1 million of that is for public safety, new vehicles, new equipment, and so on. As part of my presentation, I did want to share some highlights from the Safe St. George 5-year plan. The Safe St. George 5-year plan provides for investment in personnel, facilities, and equipment essential to the city's public safety departments of police, fire, and 911 dispatch. Funding for the Safe St. George plan is centered around 3 incremental property tax increases over the next 5 years. For this plan to be successful and sustainable, the increase included in the 23 budget will be the first property tax increase for the city in the past 35 years, as Adam highlighted in his opening comments. As mentioned in my earlier part of the presentation, the city has seen rapid growth over the past 10 years, with the 2020 census again showing us as the fastest growing city in the nation. And we continue to anticipate significant growth over the coming years. Current revenue sources have not kept pace with the growth that we've seen in providing services based on the growing demands of our community. When you look at the overall plan, we are proposing to add 104 positions in fire, police, and dispatch over the next 5 years. 3 new fire stations, one replacement fire station, 12 new fire apparatus, 146 new police vehicles, and an increase in compensation for our police officers and firefighters to help them maintain a competitive position in the market so we can continue to retain and attract a highly qualified skilled workforce. These additions will directly benefit our community through expanded fire coverage, increased police presence, improved emergency response times, and expanded proactive enforcement and prevention programs necessary to meet the growing demands of our community. In addition to these direct benefits, achieving these goals may also lead to improvements in our auto and home insurance costs as fire coverage is improved. That directly impacts the cost of homeowners insurance. And additionally, with additional officers and more proactive enforcement in our traffic division, that will hopefully help reduce some of the traffic accident counts in the city, which will also benefit our citizens. When you look at the overall the overall cost for the plan over 5 years is $89.8 million. Over that 5-year period, staff has worked hard, and we're proud to report that 74% of the plan has been paid for through current city resources. 26% of the plan is proposed to be funded through 3 incremental property tax increases over the next 5 years, which will help provide long-term, stable, and resilient revenue source to help pay for these critical needs in our community. When you look at the overall property tax bill that our residents pay, about 12% of that property tax bill goes to the city to pay for city services. The majority of your property tax bill goes to Washington County for the school district, Washington County and the water district. The 12% that goes to the city helps fund many of the services our citizens rely on, including police, fire, 911 dispatch, street maintenance, and parks and trails maintenance, just to name a few. When you look at the cost impact to our citizens for the 5-year plan, the 23 cost impact for the average primary homeowner is $5 per month, or about $5 per month, or $60 per year. Again, this will be the first property tax that we've proposed in 35 years for the city, and it goes towards a good cause by adding to our public safety to help meet the growing demands of our community. As a comparison point, when you look at the total amount of paid in city property taxes in tax year 21 as compared to our neighbors in Washington County, we are one of the lowest property tax bills within the county for the city portion. Looking at the statewide, compared to the top 10 highest population cities in the state, we are the lowest in municipal property taxes. City staff has put together a website on our Safe St. George plan, and so we'd encourage residents to go visit that website at the above address, and it provides a lot of great information on the city's Safe St. George plan, what's included in that, and the impact on property taxes. So there's a lot of really great information on there, and we'd encourage anybody that's interested to go visit that and learn more about the plan. So along with tonight's budget, staff has provided a list of amendments that we provided on June the 2nd, and I know Adam also provided those this evening, and we provided a copy at your desk. The total amendments are about $3.1 million to the budget. The largest increases in those amendments are related to the Safe St. George plan and the proposed property tax increase in 23. I did want to call attention, there's a couple of highlighted items. So we had a couple of changes from the originals that you saw. We had a correction in our CDBG amount based on receiving the final amount that we'll get in CDBG funds for 23. 8 and 9 reflect the revenue side of the transfers from our general fund related to one-time funds for the Safe St. George plan. And then number 11 is an increase in our insurance fund, and that's related to we were wanting to add additional cyber insurance coverage to the city to help protect us from any cyber threats. So those are those items. So after the conclusion of tonight's public hearing, staff does recommend council approve resolution adopting the tentative 22-23 budget, including the proposed amendments discussed tonight. Adoption of the tentative budget will allow the city to continue operations into the new fiscal year beginning July the 1st until final adoption of the budget can be held after completion of the tax rate public hearing, which is proposed to be held on August the 18th. So at that time, after the hearing, we'd have final adoption of the budget. The tax rate public hearing, again, is proposed for Thursday, August the 18th at 6 p.m. That should be a good date, but if it changes, we'll obviously let you know well in advance of that time period. And with that completes my presentation on tonight's budget. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
I just want to clarify with you, and thank you for all of that information. So are we saying, though, with these tax increases that even with having all-time high sales tax revenue, new people moving in and having increased property tax revenue, that outside of the infrastructure of roadways and water, that there's nowhere else in the budget that we can fund our police officers?
Well, right now, we've been able to fund a lot of the program already in the budget. It's just getting that last piece and the rollover costs that are associated with those ads. So for instance, we're funding Fire Station 10 staffing, which is 9 additional firefighters in the 23 budget, but we're only funding that at 25% because we anticipate to hire them in April of 23. And so there'll be a significant rollover cost into the 24 budget for that. In addition, the compensation increases would go into effect in December, and so there'll be significant rollover costs for that. So we have funded a large portion of the first year of the Safe St. George plan. It's just those second year costs that are rollover from the first year that we're needing help with on the property tax side. And I'll also say that, again, with growth in the community, we see growth in demand across our services, not just in public safety. And so we've tried to address that in the budget by, increasing the needs that we've seen. I also will say, too, that when we went into the budget process this year, we started out with about a $17 million imbalance, where we had about $17 million in additional expense requests above what you see tonight. So staff spent a significant amount of time going through the budget and trying to peel back to what we felt was absolutely needed to meet the growth demands of the community. And then in addition, inflation's had a huge impact. We've seen cost increases kind of across the board, from our fuel to our water chemicals. And so those are just increases in the budget just to continue to provide services at the level we're providing them at. I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry.
So Robert, if so we can fund for 1 year the 26 positions for public safety and those costs, but we can't fund it in year 2, 3, 4, and 5. without the tax increase.
Right, and
correct?
again, they're partially funded in the current year, so we really need to get the funding in place to full fund that. And we have not, and let me correct, we have not fully funded the compensation increases for public safety that we've proposed that we discussed with council. So my apologies. Yeah, we need the property tax increase for that as well.
I think the thing that's so super important for us to remember, and it's always been confusing to me, is that our current property tax is revenue neutral. So in a sense, it's actually been going down every year because as you know, as our homes become worth more, technically, like the percentage that we're paying is less because it's revenue neutral, right? So the city's collecting the same amount of money, but then their costs are so much more.
Right. The only growth we'll see is from new growth in the city and our property tax revenue, because again, the way that the property tax system is based in or built in Utah is that as values go up, the city's property tax rate goes down.
Right.
To bring in the same amount of revenue as the prior year.
Yeah, so I think that's important for us to remember because, you know, like our own personal, you know, obviously our own personal bills are going up and the cities are going up right along with that, but then our property tax isn't matching that. So just something to remember.
And Robert, I've heard from a couple of people, so what if you just cut $3 million out of parks for the next 5 years? Aren't those one-time funds that?
I mean, a lot of it. So
and park impact fees.
The majority of the increase in parks this year is one time. It's all for projects, for improvements in our park system. So it's all one-time costs. So if we cut that, then you know, obviously, you know, where do we get the funds to pay for those in the future? But then where do we get the funds to pay for the recurring costs of the public safety additions in the future? So.
What about golf? Eliminating that 1.9 million deficit, and you know, the option of looking into either leasing or selling, since we're not, I mean, that's not bringing in added income, we're losing income. Could that be a potential solution?
So the majority of that really the deficit's, according to my calculations, 1.37 million. All of that's related to these one-time projects. Like we're doing the St. George, the St. George Clubhouse remodel, and that's $1.3 million. That was a 22 project that we weren't able to get to, and so it's carrying to 23. So that's a sizable part of that, and we're actually pulling from reserves to pay for that. And then the other part of it, there is an overall increase in equipment and capital costs. So I think if you preclude those from that calculation, you'd see that, you know, in the 23 budget, the golf operation's profitable when you include those really large capital projects.
But is that including all of the employees and
Yes.
benefits packages and all of that?
Yes.
Yeah, because this will be our last clubhouse that needs improvement. I mean, we basically built 3 new clubhouses now.
Robert, thanks for your explanation. You're always so matter of fact and easy to understand, so I appreciate that. And this question may be for you or for Adam. If this property tax increase were to go through, what's the guarantee that it goes only for public safety, or how do we make sure that's all it's used for and it doesn't just become, you know, a license to spend more money on other things? How does that work?
Well, I mean, at a minimum, I think we'd have to talk to our finance staff. But we could definitely, I would think, establish a reserve where any of the excess rollover, you know, we put it in a reserve to make sure it's just reserved for the Safe St. George plan. Then obviously through the budget process, we make sure that our expense needs related to that plan line up with what we anticipate to receive in increased property tax revenue. So yeah, we can put controls into place to make sure that 100% of those funds go towards that program.
So could that only be used for capital projects, or could that be used for pay increases for those officers, I guess, is the bigger question.
Yeah, so that's
Pay increases.
yeah, that's proposed as part of the plan, is those pay increases. And
But I'm saying, like, so we get going down the road and there's that tax money. It's just not to buy new equipment. It could actually be used towards pay increases for those officers, right?
And that's really how we've tried to structure the plan, is to have recurring revenues paying for recurring costs and one-time revenues paying for one-time costs. And so, yes, the property tax will be going to support compensation increases, and we would try to rely on one-time costs through reserves in our capital project fund to help pay for the equipment and vehicles and other things related to the plan.
I know I spoke with Chief Stoker about this at one point about equipment and things like that, and he was just, as he explained it, he didn't want extra equipment that he was going to have to answer to somebody or have to maintain. So I guess for me, that's the catch-all is like, I don't want this tax increase, if we were to do it, just we're going to have to spend the money, just keep spending the money because we have the money. Like, it needs to be respected. So, and I know there gets to be strings tied to every dollar you take in. So I guess that's what I'm getting clarity on is how those strings are attached to that money and not just to be spending money to spend our taxpayers' money.
So the amount that we've proposed this year will help fund, again, the compensation increases for public safety that we've proposed to be amended into the budget. It will also help fund the gap in the next year's budget for the full year cost of those increases and the full year cost for Station 10 staffing that we only 25% funded in this year's budget. And then also to help fund for other additional officers that we'll be adding as part of next year's, the 24 budget. And so, again, we've tried, as we built the plan, to line up recurring revenues through property tax, through sales, through existing sales tax and other revenues within the general fund to line up with those recurring expenses. And again, to rely on reserves and other one-time source of funding for the equipment and vehicles so that we make sure that we're not collecting more in property tax revenue than we really need.
I have a question about impact fees. So we're saying that we are getting enough in park impact fees, but not in public safety impact fees?
I think from a park impact fee perspective, there's a pretty large list of projects that we're not currently able to meet with what we collect in park impact fees. But I mean, we're able to chip away at that every year. But I mean, the list I saw was, you know, well over $100 million of projects in park impact fees. So, so yeah, I think we collect enough to help get some projects done, but there's a pretty long list of projects that, you know, we're wanting to get done over the next few years.
And public safety impact fees can only go towards brick and mortar. No wage increase, no.
Right.
No police cars and things like that.
Yeah, it can't go towards equipment. It just has to go towards infrastructure. I mean, yeah, physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And maybe to further elaborate on your question, the list that we have that's eligible for park impact fees, for example, until we've collected enough fees, we don't fund items off that list. So if the impact fees fall short, if the collections are not adequate, then the projects get pushed down the road and, you know, maybe done in the future or maybe not, but it would be totally dependent on those impact fees actually coming in.
And what about the portion of TRT tax that can be used for public safety? Are we using any of that?
So yeah, the hotel tax that we receive, we've moved all of that into the general fund, and we're counting on a large portion of it to help fund a part of the 5-year plan.
Can we push all of that to public safety?
We've actually been relying on a part of that to, I think, overall help pay for services in the general fund. So I would say a portion of that was going towards public safety previously. So I guess the answer is if we were to push all of it, we'd have to cut something to do that, since we've already been relying on a portion of those revenues. Does that answer your question, I hope?
Yeah, I guess I'll just have to delve into where it's all going, but yeah, I appreciate your response.
Sure.
Any other questions for Robert? Okay, then.
Yeah, don't leave.
I will open the public hearing when you'll have 3 minutes, and Greg's going to keep time, and please spell your last name for us.
Hello, it's Greg Aldred. As my brother said, the D is not silent, so it's not all red, but it's Aldred. My time starts now, and I believe I've met most of you, so welcome. I appreciate you. I'm not going to tell you how great you are, but so here's a thought, because right now we need money, it looks like, desperate, to get this public safety going. So a little history lesson. From about this side over, from Greg on over, I don't think they were born when this happened. Jimmy, Michelle, you guys over here probably were. But back in the 80s, We were the paving contractors on Southgate Golf Course. Southgate Golf Course was privately owned. Wow. So Herb Stratton couldn't afford to pay his water bill. So it would not be appropriate to say that the city bled him out of the course. That's not true. He just couldn't pay his bills, so the city took over Southgate. It's an asset for you to consider, especially with some of Michelle's points of view on parks and recreation. I'm a golfer, I'm a pickleball player. We still have, Greg, I know you're passionate about golf courses. We still have St. George, we still have Sunbrook, 27 holes, and we still have Dixie Red Hills, where I got my first hole-in-one. Been a few years ago. They do bring economic value, not like some of the events we've had recently, but golfing does bring value, and so does the park and recreation. So I leave this with your thought of thinking about selling Southgate. It was privately before, and I think some of you that have open eyes never knew this. So it has been done. The city, that's how they acquired it. And then the other thought, which I'm kind of losing, is if you have a chance, and Adam, I know you're busy enough, but if you looked in Wyoming, what they've done on some of the privatizing of parks, as a city, we don't have to carry pensions, we don't have to pay employees. Southgate would still pay their own water bill. Maybe they'd landscape it different. And you as a council, you could dictate on even the landscape on there, as you do in a lot of your own developments, whoever purchased it, and you could put those rules of that down on how it would be developed. You don't want someone coming in there, knocking it all down, putting in 100 more homes or thousands of homes. I don't see in the plan about inflation, 30 seconds. I don't see about the recession we're getting ready to face. We're all going to have to tighten our belts up, but this is one asset I hope that you would consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Kent McDonald. I've lived in St. George since 1980. I'm a physician. I was recruited to come here, and I served at Dixie Regional Medical Center, now St. George Medical Center, for 37 years. I retired 5 years ago, and I still do a half a day a week at the doctor's volunteer clinic. But I have loved St. George, and I've watched the city grow and develop, and I have come to appreciate what a wonderful place St. George is. I've also watched our medical community grow, and of course, I personally believe the availability of good health care is one of the things that attracts people to a place to live. I also believe that in order to attract good health care people, you have to have other things to attract those individuals to come to our community. And so I think, a low crime rate is really important. I think lots of recreational opportunities are very important, is one of the things that people look at. I think having a community of caring, kind, friendly people is important. We have that in spades just by the nature of our community, I think. And then I think it's important for me and for many of my colleagues to have a city government that supports the arts and recreation. And as I hear the debate about dollars, I know that those are the things that seem like they're the first things that could come off at nobody's expense. But my personal opinion is that those are very expensive things, because those are the things that are attracting the very high quality people that come to our community and that keep them here. And they're the things that give us hope, and the things that give us our hope for our children and hope in the future. And so as you consider spending the money, I would ask you not to consider not cutting out those little things that mean so much to so many people. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Sean McCabe, MCCABE. Real quick, so your mission, we provide services that focus on people and advance a thriving community. So real quick, just some pay here. Chief of Police, $259,429, wage and benefit. City Manager, $254,966, wage and benefit. City Attorney, $218,181. Energy and Services Director, $203,986. Fire Chief, $188,858. So we got a $500 million approximately budget by 87,176 people, which works out to be $5,735 per person. Average income in St. George per the United States Census Bureau is $22,230, $54,022 per household. So you guys are talking about this stuff for a very affluent community. Oh, parks, golf. Let's speak about that. Department total for parks, 21, $5,946,640. Proposed, $7,914,329. Golf, 21, $5,871,481. Proposed, $8,347,625. Total of $16,261,954. As we were just told, that's 90% of our water. So my question is, with inflation, government data, 8.6%, 41-year high. Real inflation, shadow stats, 16.8%. You talk about 35 years of no increases, but we're one of the fastest growing cities. So you guys are getting revenue. Costs are going up, so you're still getting more revenue. Total mortgage applications volume is down 52.79% from a year ago. Mortgage rates hit on June 14th, 6.3%. So the question becomes, you're issuing new water permits, new housing permits, with Lagoon, the down desert color with the Lagoon. You guys are selling tickets on the Titanic and asking people to keep coming, and you're not even able to guarantee the water for the next 10 years. We're in an inflationary environment where you guys are making these decisions with these high wages that are irrespective of the people actually in St. George. So I beg you to please stay on budget, and I would propose that we could have actually somebody that can audit this budget. Thank you.
Judy Bozeman, B-O-Z-E-M-A-N. Many comments have been made that I thought needed to be clarified or mentioned. There's been a lot of talk as to whether parks are constitutional, whether the city should provide parks and sometimes equipment. I found a handy little guideline put out by the National Park Service, a study on the park and recreation problem of the United States. If anybody wants to know, I can give you the link to it. Anyway, the first portion is a good explanation of why parks and recreation are afforded by the Constitution and the various rulings to support it. I won't cite them all, but in Kentucky, and I'm going to read the whole thing, it may therefore be regarded as settled in this jurisdiction that public parks maintained and managed without corporate or individual gain or profit are not only exempt from taxation, but may be created and maintained by taxation. Hence, they are essentially public places established for purely public purposes. The right of the city to support public parks by taxation is rested upon the ground that the municipal authorities are charged with the duty of maintaining the public health and that parks where exercises and recreation can be indulged in and pure and clean air breathed contribute largely to the health of the community. Viewing the matter from this standpoint, the parks of this city occupy towards it and its inhabitants the same relation as do hospitals and other public institutions, useful and necessary in the preservation of the health, safety, and morals of the people. In Utah, it has been held that the management of a public park and the presentation therein of a pageant are clearly matters of public service for the general and common good, designed exclusively for the social advantages, entertainment, and pleasure of the general public. I think those are very important. We have not had a property tax increase in 35 years. I would classify that as flipping amazing. The most common target seems to be the elimination of golf parks and leisure services activities. Eliminate after-school sports programs, and what are your kids going to do? Now you have a potential increase in juvenile misactivity, I guess you'd call it, which causes a need for more policing. If you eliminate the city's involvement in golf, in addition to the benefits the courses give to our youth, how many people come here for golfing weekends, while here people recreate, eat, and shop? Now I must move on because I got the 30-second. Okay, 27% of the monies taxed comes from tourism. If we do not have tourism, our property taxes would be $1,300 more annually, which is monthly is $108. So compare $5 a month to $108. I mean, that's economics, stupid. I guess that's it since my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, can I ask one question? On item 5 on the agenda, if the resolution for the certified tax rate is not adopted, what gets eliminated from the budget? And can that be addressed when you talk about the resolution?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Can I make a quick comment too? Because this came up a lot last budget meeting too about parks. And I just want to clarify that I don't think anybody up here is against parks and recreation. For me, which I know a lot of this is directed toward me since I've publicly stated that I feel like they are lower priority items, but I've never stated defund all the parks. I just think, as what's been mentioned earlier too, with inflation, with our police, which is number one in providing for the proper role of government, we have to really prioritize and get creative with parks. And there are other private funds. There's lots of other things that can be explored than raising taxes. So I'm not saying I don't love parks.
Okay, I'm going to ask for no more applause because that's going to take too long. And then also, please refrain from whispering. It carries up here, and then we can't hear the speaker.
Mayor, Council, my name is Steve Brazel, B as in boy, R-A-Z-E-L-L. I lived here 30 years ago. Briefly, I've been in New York City for the past 2 decades, moved back. We chose Utah because the property taxes in Austin, Texas are outrageous. Quality of life is very high here. But one of the challenges I think that we all face is that we look to growth and think that's a good thing. The budget in New York City this year is $100 billion, over $100 billion, yet quality of life has deteriorated. It's almost unlivable in New York City. Crime, drugs, homelessness is rampant. We're starting to see the effects. What I want the City Council to take into consideration today is that the boom is over. We just haven't felt the shockwave yet. Houses are on the market longer. They're slashing prices. People are taking their families out to eat less. Inflation has skyrocketed. Gas has doubled. The trickle-down effect is starting. My son is trying to open a business. He's been trying for 30 days. We don't have the resources to be able to, for him to go get the inspections he needs so he can start his business, so he can start paying his taxes. But yet we've got money for golf courses. We've got money for water. We've got money for parks and recreation. I agree 100%. We've got to start prioritizing because quality of life with growth will deteriorate. We cannot continue to be bought and paid for by developers. Mayor, I think 70% of your campaign donations came from builders, developers, and people that benefit from that. It puts you in a very difficult position of being able to tell them, no, no more. If you want to save St. George, we have to start making tougher decisions. We have to start saying no to growth. We have to start turning down that faucet. I know you don't want to be the one that turns down the faucet on economic growth, but we're headed for a cliff if we continue down this path. So I urge the City Council to take into consideration the economic challenges that the country is facing. Gas is going to be $7, $8, $9 by this fall. We're going to see the ramifications. People are traveling less. We're going to see real challenges. Please take that into consideration when you look at the budget and when we look at quality of life, so that we can make the priorities that will keep St. George, St. George. Thank you.
No applause, please.
Hi, my name is Brad Bennett. I guess I just have a few quick comments that I want to make. First off, I guess probably what should be best to start out by just show of hands. How many of you have actually gone over the line items of this budget and can honestly say that you agree with that all this money is necessary to be spent? Okay, so this is a pretty big increase, and I think that when you look at taxes maybe not having been raised as often as they should, that does make sense. But I don't know that it makes sense to raise it to this magnitude. I think we can all agree that most government institutions don't necessarily do the best job at running efficiently. And I saw a nice presentation today on the budget, but I didn't see a presentation on what we've done to trim the fat, so to speak, what we've done to be more efficient with the money that we have already. So I think that's a big concern. I think it's not a surprise to anyone that, we're approaching some pretty tough economic times probably. So this is not really the best time to have a tax increase. So I think that it would be smart to table this, to have a full audit done of what we're doing to get the costs down, and then a full audit of what's actually really necessary going forward. At the bare minimum, this should be done in steps, because this is a pretty huge increase, and we're also seeing that the numbers that are put up on the presentation here don't necessarily jive with some of the numbers that the citizens are reporting. So this is a huge concern too, and I think that warrants an audit. But I appreciate you guys being proactive and trying to make this a great town for all of us. But I do think that we need to focus on being much more efficient than we are, especially with such a large increase. And does the chief of police need a $250,000 salary if we're already admitting that police officers are being underpaid? I think that's a big issue there, and I think there's a disparagement there we need to look at. So again, thank you for your time, and I hope that you'll take some of these words to heart, and we can work together to come up with a better solution. Thank you.
Hi, council members. My name is Jamie Ballman, BAHLMANN. I'm actually here as a representative from the Stephen Wade organization tonight. I have spoken personally with Stephen and with Jared, and we have some thoughts regarding the budget proposal. First off, Stephen wanted me to share that he wants the City Council to know and understand we appreciate and realize the difficulty of what you are dealing with in protecting and paving the way for our city given its complex challenges. So thank you. But as a spokesperson, we are in support of the tax increase to assist with our public safety challenges the city faces. We want the city to know we value our public safety officers and our personnel. We've had to call many times just in the past 6 months for assistance at our place of business. And they are amazing, professional men and women. I guess my final comments, we urge you to approve the taxation resolution to assist with these challenges. but I do want to share my personal opinion. My final comments are in regards to being a police officer's wife. I moved to St. George to marry a man that wanted nothing more than to be a policeman, and St. George City gave him that opportunity. I left my career to come down to live out his dream. St. George has been very good to us. Sorry, I get emotional. But it was hard. My husband worked 2 and 3 jobs, and I have worked most of our marriage. I remember strapping my 2 little boys in their car seats to go see their dad after he worked 40 hours for St. George City, 16 hours as an officer out at Sand Hollow State Park, and then he worked at the state liquor store that evening. And I remember strapping my kids in to go see their father. It was very hard. Like I said, we've been here 18 years and the city has been good to us, and I thank you for that. But the weight of the shoulders are on these police officers to protect this city. So I just wanted to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Hey, Council and Mayor and everybody. McCrae Hepler, Heppler. Probably need to spell McCrae too, M-A-C-R-A-E. I was just going to come listen, but decided to get up here. Appreciate you guys. Hats off to you, because tough position that you guys are constantly put in. The last time taxes were increased, I wasn't alive when Southgate was private, which I didn't know that, Greg. He left already. I wasn't alive for the last time that the city increased. And so I'll be super brief too. I just wanted to give my opinion on being in favor of the tax increase. I'm willing, as a homeowner, a business owner, and a real estate investor, I pay property taxes in multiple different facets, and I just wanted to say that I am okay. I would rather, if it came down to that, or public parks and rec, and all of that factor. I'm not one that is for tax increase of all kinds, but if it is a need, I just wanted to say I'm for it, especially, which should be no question, if it is going to public safety. I have family that is police officers as well, and I know how important those are. So appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thanks.
My name's Dana McCabe, last name MC, capital C-A-B-E. Couple points I'd like to make. I don't think anybody behind me doesn't back the blue, doesn't believe they deserve to be paid. In the last 3 years, St. George population has increased by about 15,000, but yet the budget is about doubled. They're one-time expenditures, so my question would be, in 5 years, are you going to drop the taxes back down a couple $100 million? If we can't pay our police out of $500 million, that's billion, then this city is mismanaged. To ask people to shelter, whether it's 1 penny extra or $100 a year, you're missing the point. There needs to be a public audit of this budget. We need to pay our first responders and our police. I don't like that it's getting pitted against, if you don't want a tax increase, that somehow we don't support our first responders. I'm all for paying our first responders and our police officers what they are worth, and then I think that you should look at tax cuts, especially because people are already in an inflationary environment, incurring one of the biggest tax increases in the history of our lifetime. Thank you.
I want to say that the city of St. George does have an outside audit yearly.
My name is Jim Leroy. Last name is L-E, capital R, because of being French, O-Y. And I just want to, And I want to commend the staff on the presentation on the proposed budget. I've managed budgets of up to $1 billion in my career, and I understand the difficulty in coordinate all of their various elements. And what you've done as a council and as a staff to identify and then face and address St. George's immediate issues is really to be commended. And my recommendation is that you adopt the budget as it's been proposed, recognizing that it came from the people who know best what they need, the staff and the department heads who are charged with discharging all of the duties that are imposed on them. I'm also in favor of the tax increase for the public safety. We are also a St. George Police family, myself and my wife, and understand firsthand the job that's being done, the shortage of staff, the need for additional equipment, and public safety begins. None of the rest of what you want to accomplish here in St. George as far as making it a livable place and an attractive place happens if it's not safe to be here. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor, Council members, and fellow citizens. My name is Linda Shadio, S-H-A-D-I-O-W. I moved to St. George, my husband and I, 9 years ago, and one of the first questions I asked myself was, what does it mean to be a resident, and DMV and voter registration and the tax rolls told me, and what does it mean to be a citizen? And I've spent 9 years exploring, coming to learn what it means to be a citizen, and how can I be a citizen in a community whose spaces welcomed me. Just very briefly, I simply want to say how valuable, as someone who's trying to be a citizen after 9 years, your work is. I find I can bike to the grocery store. I can walk to the post office. I can meet people from different generations in public spaces, because the spaces that I may go into in other ways, they would be people I wouldn't meet. So my friends in St. George over 9 years, everyone from a 9-year-old to a 104-year-old, thank you in part due to arts, parks, recreation that is hard to prioritize. However, I think there's an overlooked part of that priority, and that is the impact on how all those people behind all the boxes and lines on page 3 of the budget, where the organizational chart is made out, how we interact with each other and broaden the scope of who we are is fed by that critical infrastructure. And it may not be visible, but I was blown away by that chart on page 3. And so I just wanted to say thank you. I stop people on trails and in parks. I write letters. But when a friend said, Linda, I invite you to look at the budget, I did. And I wanted to come and pass on my thanks to you directly. There's a Japanese word, yuin, Y-O-I-N. And a literal translation is the reverberations that continue long after a well-cast bell has been struck. And that's the budget, but that's also all the elements of the budget that get hard to prioritize. Thank you.
Thanks.
Betty Hackett, Hackett. I went to the Planning Commission on Tuesday. What is coming here is absolutely crazy. I don't want to pay for new people to come here. If they want to come, let's raise the property taxes on new residents. And have we looked into a inmate prison system where we can have low-risk inmates out there cleaning up our bike paths and our trails? I don't know if anyone has looked into that. And yesterday, the Salt Lake City Council passed a budget of $425 million. How do you justify a budget that is higher than Salt Lake City? If they can do it for less than we're doing it, we're doing something wrong, and you need to figure it out.
Perhaps just a quick clarification. Salt Lake City's general fund is $425 million. The total budget is $1.5 billion.
Hi, I'm Pete. I'm not going to talk about energy policy again. Last name Ronley, Rognli. So, I'm here to talk on behalf of public spaces and fiscal conservatism. I'd like to start with an excerpt from a letter written in 1882 by then church president John Taylor to the stake of Logan in response to their request to build houses in their farmland, i.e., their request to urban sprawl. In all cases in making new settlements, the saints should be advised to gather together in villages. The advantages of this plan, instead of carelessly scattering out over a wide extent of the country, are many and obvious. Their compact organization gives them many advantages of a social and civic character which might be lost, misapplied, or frittered away by spreading out so thinly that intercommunication is difficult, dangerous, inconvenient, and expensive. So, I'm here to speak on behalf of public spaces. Several folks talking last week mentioned how they like to recreate on their own streets. And I know we have looked here at a Complete Streets initiative, and I've got a 7-year-old, and I know he cannot get to school on his own on our streets the way they're currently designed. So I'd like to look briefly at our history, and this is from papers done by BYU on kind of the function of the original street layout. And don't worry, I'll just take a minute. So you've got these massive blocks, these massive 132-foot wide streets, right? And you have these big lot sizes with these big offsets. And what that causes then is you've got a de facto park in the middle of each of these blocks. We don't have those parks anymore. You've got these big spaces that are 132 feet wide. People think that's for turning around a wagon. That was the unit of measurement, not the purpose, right? And so you had traffic running in a small corridor down the middle, obviously cart, horse traffic, right? And then you've got a buffer zone, plants, weeds, whatever there. And then you've got public space on either side of that street, taking up the majority of the street. That's why our streets are 132 feet wide. They're not to put pavement on. Pavement has terrible ROI. But if we can, I guess my call and my great hope would be that we can think about the function of our streets and how we can make those public spaces. Because as we all know, there's terrible, terrible ROI on the type of development that we're creating right now. And if we want to be fiscally conservative and have spaces for people in our community, I think that's totally possible with some creative thinking and some historical thinking. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Betty Hackett again. I don't think I used my 3 minutes. I just want to suggest for those who don't mind having their property taxes increased, set up a GoFundMe account for St. George, and let's see what we get.
I will use my time very quickly. Has anybody talked to the Utah Taxpayers Association? I have found them to be one of the most aggressive watchdog organizations out there, and so I will ask the question, have they looked at this budget? And if so, what have they said? Probably a question for staff.
Would you like me to address that? Dee, where you've had those conversations, why don't you share what you've discussed?
Mayor and Council, I'd be happy to share a discussion that I had with Rusty Cannon. He is the director of the Utah Taxpayers Association. I went through the 5-year plan for the Safe St. George with him on Tuesday, explained all the funding mechanisms, our property tax increase. At the end of the conversation, he actually said that he understands what we're trying to do, that he that as a taxpayers association, and I hope I can share this with you, but in that he hasn't come out and officially put it in writing, and that's the only reason why I hope I can share this with you. But he said that they would actually not oppose the proposal that is before you, that they would actually probably endorse the proposal as it has been laid out. That to me was a significant verbal proposal or verbal endorsement of the 5-year plan. He understands that we have not increased property taxes for 35 years and felt like this was an appropriate time and appropriate purpose to do that. So
I would again emphasize that although staff have had that information and that correspondence with the Taxpayers Association, we didn't feel it was appropriate to make any announcements, and I still don't think we should rely on that until they would actually take a formal position. Typically they'll do that when those cities or entities that are going through the truth in taxation process later in August is when they typically take that position. So I just would want to clarify that we really can't speak for them, and that I think their final position will be forthcoming.
that's
Thanks,
correct.
Steve.
Mhm.
My name is Johnny Hepler, H-E-P-P-L-E-R, and I love this city. And I appreciate all of you and your willingness to serve. Thank you for this opportunity to address the city leadership, and thank you for your service to our city and your leadership in our community. You have challenging and important jobs, and the decisions that you make impact the lives of those that you serve. I want to express my gratitude to you for your willingness to serve. It's not easy. I've been a peace officer for almost 20 years, and I've had the privilege of working alongside some of the finest men and women that this profession has to offer. The mission of the St. George Police Department is to work with the citizens to preserve life, maintain human rights, protect property, and promote individual responsibility and community commitment. Our police officers place themselves in harm's way each day to ensure this mission is met. They don't have enough help. They're severely understaffed, making their jobs more dangerous. Our officers are exposed to a greater risk of harm because of this. Our city has grown at an unprecedented rate, and I don't think any of us could have predicted the challenges that we would be facing as we grew so rapidly as a city. In my career, I started in law enforcement in 2003. The population of St. George City was about 44,000 people. Today, we're looking at about 100,000 people in our city, 100,000 citizens that we take care of. A graveyard shift or a shift in 2003 ran with 5 police officers. There was 2 cars in the center of town, 2 cars on the edge of town, and then 1 car down in the southern region of town, and 1 supervisor. There's 5 police officers and 1 supervisor for 44,000 people in St. George. We've grown tremendously geographically, and of course with our population as well. And we are still running similar numbers on our shifts. We're still running shifts very regularly with the same number of officers that we were when half as many people lived here, and when the city was half or less the size geographically that it is now. The calls for service have increased dramatically, and the types of calls have become more violent, and the individuals that we deal with less responsive to traditional and safer forms of policing. This budget has been well thought out with great input from amazing leaders. Our chief of police represents us and provides to you all the challenges that we're facing. These men and women, they are the thin blue line that place themselves between evil and our citizens, and they do it willingly and happily. They will lay down their life for any of our citizens. I just would please encourage you to vote to pass this budget, and it will bless the lives of our citizens and our police officers. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. I got a text from Christina. The previous person was Steve Kemp, K-E-M-P. Rule breaker.
Good evening. My name is Judith Rognli, R-O-G-N-L-I. I guess I just have one short comment with regards to the Save St. George plan, the 5-year plan, which is, I would really like to propose to you to look at it very broadly and to look at art parts and trails and recreation as a potential part of your 5-year safety plan, because a lot of important prevention lies in arts and recreation and what you're doing with that, and also looking at what you're doing in terms of your infrastructure investments. I talked about biking a lot here last time, but I think infrastructure investments towards safety are important for everybody in the community. There are a lot of incidents, a lot of crashes that our first responders need to respond to. So yes, I would like to ask you to take that into account with your safety strategy. I think that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ann Van West, V-A-N-W-E-S-T.
You talk closer into the mic so
Yes.
we can hear you. Thank you.
Ann Van West. I am a police officer's wife here in St. George. I don't know. I know you guys are working diligently at the budget. I can see that all of you really care about this city and and are really working hard towards this budget. And I think it's kind of getting off track of the all over budget and parks and things like this. The targeted tax increase for public safety is needed. It's that targeted money where the overall budget doesn't matter, because this city is growing so much and there's so much pressure being put on our police officers, and they need our support, because you're not going to have them. They're going to start leaving. And so while everybody's arguing about whether this park or this golf course or whatever, there's more crime, there's more work for them to do, and we can sit here all day and talk about whether this park should have this or that park should have that, but these officers need this now. They need the targeted money for equipment, for help, for backup. And so, and, things aren't getting better. Cost of living isn't getting better. Everything, we need this for our public safety, or you won't have one, in my belief.
I just want to make a quick comment to that, and I really appreciate those comments, and I just want to make sure that you guys realize, and I guess I just speak for myself, but probably me being one of the most critical ones of the budget, I in no way, shape, or form want to take anything from our public safety. That is number one for me. When I bring up parks and these other things, I'm only bringing those up because I look at, why haven't we looked at other options outside of tax increase to support our officers? Not because I don't want the officers to have the support. So that's why that's being brought up, is because I think there's alternative solutions to just increasing everyone's taxes.
And to echo that, Michelle, and to kind of clarify, the reason why we're here is really because of that, is because most of us up here have campaigned on or talked about that our main priority is public safety. And so we've tasked our staff to say, hey, this is what we think needs to happen. This is what we're hearing. We see we're behind. We need to do something. What can we do? And so then they have brought forth this plan. So that's why we're having this discussion. So I would echo what Councilwoman Tanner's saying is I've never heard her say that, that she's not for police officers. And I don't like it when we try to turn this conversation into it's one or the other. I think we're up here, we're all committed, this council is all committed that we're going to make sure that we have the best of the best. And to have the best of the best, we got to treat them like the best of the best. And we're committed to that. The reason why it's not already done is because we also consider ourselves to be very conservative, and no one wants to be part of this whole tax increase conversation. And so what we're trying to say is there any other way? Or what is the other way? And it's very simple to take this large number in the budget and say, well, that's too much money. The harder part is to say, which ones of those pots of money are you going to do away with? For example, when we start saying, we're building a reservoir, what is it, 15 million? $18 million. We're building a reservoir as the city of St. George for secondary water. That's a lot of money. So are we going to do away with that one? Absolutely not. So that's when we start talking about an audit and this conversation, this is a good conversation. There's nothing that's been said tonight. Well, there might be a few things, but everything that's been said tonight has probably ran through our minds or part of our conversation. Even the fact that when we think about that large number, we say, how can we not figure out how to pay our police officers, like this young lady said? You know, we think those things, but the reason why we're here tonight having this conversation is because these people up here all said, hey, this is a priority to us. We want the staff to come back and tell us how we can do this, because we're going from a mostly part-time fire department to a fully staffed fire department with multiple fire stations, all these things. There's not a thing that St. George City doesn't do. We do so many more things than a lot of cities, from our own power department to an airport, all of the things that we do. There's just tons of them. So I think it's good to realize that the reason why we're here is because we're not just being say, hey, let's raise taxes. It's saying, hey, we got a problem. How can we fix it? Here's maybe a solution. Now, I don't know that this is the answer. I'm not endorsing it as of yet, but we want to have this conversation. There's nothing wrong with having the conversation. There's nothing wrong with having the conversation. And I'd also like to say I've never heard Councilwoman Tanner say she's ready to do away with all the parks. Now, she has some pretty tough ideas, but that's okay. It's okay to ask those questions, and it's okay to be a little tough. So, and that's, I love it. I want to have this conversation. I want to hear your ideas. At the end of the day, you've seen the comments tonight. There's going to be some people that are upset, and there's going to be some people that are really happy. It's a pretty divided issue when you start talking about these things. So I just thought that was a good time to segue into that when Councilwoman Tanner brought that up, because she is right. So.
Well, and I want to add on to that, great comments by both of you. I think the thing that we need to remember too is that we have an excellent budget team, and they have been working extremely hard to do exactly what Councilmember Hughes is talking about, which is to take in all of your comments, which are super valuable to us, and to trim this budget. They've been working on it for months and months, and everybody, all of our senior staff, everybody down to every single employee of the city has contributed to how do we run the leanest, cleanest budget in the state? How do we maintain ourselves as low property taxes? So even if we do accept this very tiny property tax, it gives a big boost to our first responders, and it's a very small amount in relation to 35 years of no raising. So when you balance that out, I feel like we just have to give huge kudos to our budget team that they've been able to figure this out, and the majority of it is already coming from different spaces within the budget. Like, they have stripped it down from every possible location, and then there's this small amount left that we need And the thing that I think we also have to remember too is that the reason why property tax, like why that, is because it's a stable tax as opposed to some taxes that are unstable, that we don't know when they're going to come and go. So, you know, being able to stabilize that portion and to look at a number that's, you know, $5 per household extra is definitely something we should continue to discuss and figure out if that's what works for us. But I just wanted to make sure that our budget team doesn't leave tonight not knowing how much we appreciate them and all of their hard work.
I just want to jump on that with the budget team. I think we haven't raised property taxes in 35 years. We have a budget team that's made it, so we haven't raised property taxes in 35 years. I think they've run lean and they've done just an extremely good job. So, yeah, these are super difficult discussions. I'm, you know, born and raised cheap kid from Southern Utah that doesn't want to, you know, I'm very conservative. We have some major challenges going on right now too. You know, inflation alone, 8%. Well, what do you do to cover, you know, what do you do to make up for that? And it's just so many things that are at us right now. We've kicked the can down the road for so long, which is a good thing. So we're just trying to make those very difficult decisions right now. How do we make sure that we fund our police department and our first responders, which is crucial to all of us? I mean, no matter what happens, that's going to get done. I think everybody knows that. Where do you cut? If you have to cut, if you don't want to increase property tax, it's just a very difficult decision. So I just want to make those comments.
Yeah, and that's what I want to be clear on is whether we raise taxes or not, the police are getting what they need. We will absolutely make sure that that's the case. You know, if we have to get more creative in the budget, which is what I'm an advocate for, then that's what we do. But in no way by me not wanting to raise taxes means that that's going to be taking from the police, because police are number one. Absolutely.
I'm there with firefighters as well, though. It was important for me, for Desert Canyon, to get a fire station out there. It's been difficult for some of those people to get fire insurance, and I look at other areas that ISO rating is important, and it affects everybody's. If they came in, it would affect all of our ratings. And I feel the same way about police. So as we see crime, just in the last couple of weeks, what has happened to our community, and it's not one officer being called, it's 6, and it's taking away from other areas of the community. This to me is not about fire and police. It's about, I think we decided the word was bloat. That was the nice word, is like, are we being efficient across the board in the city? Are we stepping back and looking at every one of the departments and saying, do we have extras? Are we running as lean as we possibly can with all this growth? Because with technology and just how the nature of business changes, are we being as efficient across the board as the city, or is there other things we can cut back on? And then parks is an easy thing to pick on because the budget is so big. I drive by parks more than ever, and I hear more about parks than ever. And I hear from elderly to young how important those parks, and I have visited the rec center a little bit, and to see those little kids, and my mom is 93 years old in September, and really that little class saved her life during COVID. So I am grateful that we have the parks and the trails and everything we do. My concern is that we take in these tax dollars because we can, and not being totally fiscally responsible, because I have a small business background, and that's the first way you look, is you look at management, you look at how we can streamline and cut back that. But for me, it's never about funding the police and the fire department, because those are
yes,
two
I should have
equally
clarified
yoked.
public safety.
You know, I know that like the firemen don't go in without the police. They're both very valuable people in our community.
Yes.
I didn't want to take 3 minutes away from anybody else here. My name's Mike McKee, that's M-C-K-E-E. Unfortunately, my wife could not make it tonight. She had a prior commitment, and she gave me a note to read, but I think a lot of it's already been carried by other folks, and but I just mentioned it because you know what they say. Happy wife, happy life.
Questions I have, and maybe you can address it for me, when you guys go buy equipment, like new police vehicles, do you go to other law enforcement agencies in the state to see if they're buying something also and piggyback in? Because everybody knows the more you buy in quality, usually the price comes down. Have you addressed that? I'm sorry, this is kind of a clarification for me. Have you guys addressed that thought? Let's just, okay, great. Same thing with the fire equipment? How about the brush engines that you need? Do you need type 3s or type 6s? Okay, because as you know, there's huge wildland firefighting agencies. You've got the U.S. Forest Service, the BLM, BIA, there's a ton of them, and they build all kinds of type 3s and type 6s. It may be another route to go with what the feeling is I'm getting from the group. Let's get it, but let's, get it as cheap as possible, and maybe that'll help us get more revenue too. And I agree, we need to pay our public safety officers. There's no doubt about it. And also, I understand that we're looking at a new city hall in the budget. Is that?
Well, we've carried it over for, is this the second year, and it might be carried over another year because of
Well, I was just going to
supplies
say,
and stuff.
do we need to build a new city hall, or can we buy an existing property? I'm thinking that big Kmart structure sitting out there on Bluff Road. It's just a thought. Maybe, it's big, it's not occupied. Maybe that would work for a while until, I guess timing is everything, and right now with the economy being what it is, even if it's just $5 more a month we got to pay in property taxes, who knows the way this inflation's going to go. It's scary for a lot of us that are on fixed income. Anyway, thank you. You can have your 30 seconds. You might need it to talk some more.
Mayor, Council, Chief Stoker, just to address their concerns, our large apparatus we purchase off our national purchasing procurement through it's a national contract that kind of like state bid, but it's a federal national contract. And then our type 6, our smaller brush trucks, we actually have our fleet build those for us. And so we'll buy our beds, our chassis, all those types of things. And our fleet department actually builds those for us rather than buying those from a separate company, which saves us hundreds of thousands of dollars on our smaller type 6 rigs. So it's we are very cost efficient in how we put those wildland trucks together.
Thanks, Chief.
My name is Howard Hepworth, Hepworth, and Madam Mayor, esteemed council members. I want to stand tonight to encourage you to support the proposed budget as I read it and understand it and have heard it presented tonight as well. I haven't done my own personal audit, but I trust that your team has done a good job, and I encourage you to support that. I am specifically wanting to take part of that and dissect it. I believe the Safe St. George program is something that we all need. We need to make sure that that part of our community is funded, taken care of, and supported in all that we do. So that specific part of the budget and how you're going to go about that, and it was presented tonight, I support. Secondly, on a personal note, you've also discussed tonight a little bit the benefits of recreation, and I have a budget item that's important to me that thankfully will not impact or compete against the Safe St. George, and that is the recommendation to use the impact fees to support the expansion of the Little Valley complex of pickleball. I get to travel the nation as a player and an official and see this great sport activating the lives of many people who've kind of sat around and be couch potatoes, even that group. But it is an incredible opportunity for the city to have a wonderful complex like we've got that is world class. And the expansion will only increase that and give the local residents now, which is a saturated actually environment, more opportunity to play, to enjoy social and recreational activity. And I want to encourage you, and well, actually I'm grateful that it doesn't challenge some of the other budget item as an impact fee. And I'm thankful that the city has chosen to use the impact fees to expand that complex. Thank you.
Thanks.
Erica Hodges, Hodges, and I just had a few questions. I don't understand reading budgets very well, but I had a few questions. And can you repeat the one-time expenditure amount that you said earlier? And will you commit, since it's one time, does that mean that next year's budget won't have that on it? And then on page 68 in the budget general fund summary, it says in 2020 to 21, the city manager was $741,602, and then in the 2022 to 23 budget, it's $1,494,000. I could be reading it wrong, but that seems like a really big increase on that. And then also the COVID relief fund in 2020 and 21, you spent $3.6 million. Where did that go to? Because that would fund the police in that area, but I know you have to use it for certain things. And then I just had a question on the leisure services. In the parks planning and design, in the 2020-21, it was $609,000, and then the 2022-23 was $5,891,650. And then also the aquatics center was $776,000, and it moves up to $1.2 million. And so I don't know what all the costs include, but those seem like dramatic increases. And going through line by line, it reminds me of the story of the truck that got stuck under a low bridge. And the police came and the firefighters and trying to figure out how to get the diesel truck unstuck from the bridge. And the kid just calls out and says, "Why don't you let air out of the tires so it can go under?" I know we're looking at it how we want it, like we're normally looking at it, but can we please look for other sources to cut from our spending so that we do not put any more burden on the citizens? Thank you.
Adam, did you want to address any of those line items that you talked about?
Sure. Most of those funds that you mentioned, for example, the differences year over year represent a capital project. Like at the Aquatic Center, we've had significant investments in equipment that needs to be repaired or replaced. In the city manager budget, we've added multiple divisions to the city manager budget, including communications, government affairs, and also our prosecutors. And so let's see, what were some of the others? Any of the other increases, we can go line by line. We're happy to take as much time as you'd like to look at every single one of those departments, every single line item, and explain where the increase is or what the change is based on.
Can you address where the $3 million COVID relief went?
Trevor can do that for you. We have a very strict accounting of all of those funds.
Yeah, so that COVID relief fund, or the CARES Act, that we received in 2020, 2.5 million of that went to benefit public safeties for salaries and wages. We met as a committee and identified that because of the mitigation efforts that public safety, police, fire went through, as well as custodial services, other things that are directly impacted related to COVID, we felt like they needed to be compensated from additional exposure potentially to the COVID. So in addition to our own efforts to try and keep our facilities clean with extra cleaning, we ramped up significantly extra cleaning, so it cost us a lot of in cleaning supplies, additional resources to bring in people, back overtime pay and so forth to clean our facilities. In the event that we had somebody that came in looking for services that had COVID, we would have to close offices down and fog and fumigate, and so we bought supplies in that regard, as well as PPEs and other services like that. I will also say I'm in the administrative service office. I have the opportunity to sit with the budget team. We have over 44,000 individual general ledger accounts. I sincerely appreciate all the comments and suggestions and thoughts. We've done that. We use inmates tremendously to try and keep our costs down. They're a great resource. It's great service for them. During COVID, That program ceased. We couldn't use them because of the potential for exposure to COVID. We now are able to use them, so we use them a lot on the parks. We try to also, we feel strongly in the city that we, as public servants, we should give back. So I know the department heads and staff donate our time to clean roads, facilities, pull out sod at our golf courses, other places to keep costs down. In my budget, I've been with the city for 5 years, with the county prior to that for 15 years. Conservative in all aspects. We've tried to do more with less. We continue to have over 1,000 plus new accounts on utilities year after year. We've outsourced a lot of our services. That has saved the city money. That has been able to, as employees retire or move on because pay is better at other locations sometimes. We've tried to not replace those positions. I struggle every year whether I should have a Christmas social event that the city, would pay $400 for a staff of 28. And I can probably speak for all my department head peers. The budget team goes through line by line, item by item. We look at pictures. We go site visits at locations, cemeteries, other locations to see, is it really needed? Can we go an extra year? We're all taxpayers. We all have families. We struggle with this to make sure services are provided at the highest level for what the council, mayor, and our citizens request. We start this process a lot of times in December. This year we waited a little bit for the new council to come on, wanting their input and direction on this. We go through that process, we sit with them, and then we also go through and apply those recommendations to our budgets where appropriate, and then also look at ways that we can do more with less. So that's just a small little comment, but I do sincerely, like Jimmy said, I welcome any thoughts, ideas, suggestions of what we can do better to improve the services. We work for you as a citizens, as a community. We value your input. We value your volunteerism, your sense of community, sense of love, sense of taking care of it. As you walk by a street and you see trash, oftentimes you pick it up and you teach your kids not to throw trash. So all those things are super beneficial to our community, and so I just give thanks for that. So
Thank you, Trevor. I appreciate your comments. They're heartfelt.
And he's a penny pincher for sure.
My name's Philip Lamoureux, Lamoreaux. I feel really uncomfortable being up here. This is not really, a lot of thoughts that have been going through my mind, but I've made my own mistakes, my own issues in assuming certain things about what's being proposed, and I still don't know it 100%. The one thing that I can say is that one of the things that I struggle with myself is mental health, depression, addiction, things like that. And one of the areas that I think there is a lot of evidence in is making sure that there are ways for recreation, ways for things to be active in, which is one of the reasons why I am very big into the pickleball world, and I love what that's done for me the last 6 years. And not only that, I have 3 kids, 8, 6, and 2, and they absolutely love going to the parks. They love being able to go to the other amenities that have been provided, and I recognize that not everybody gets to participate or wants to participate in those public, I guess, benefits. And so when it comes to the budget, I don't know as if I'm really one way or another, as in, do we find different ways to cut, or are there ways that we can maybe subsidize? I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I do think that as long as what is in your guys' mind when you're making these decisions is that you make sure that there is still the opportunity for those of us that have, I guess, these silent diseases that nobody really knows until we share, and oftentimes it's too late. And thank you. And so, whatever it is, however you guys decide to do that, I would just ask that you make sure that it is in the forefront of your mind. I do understand that we do need raises and things for police, for firemen. I think that's very important, but it is something that I want to make sure that at least that's in the forefront of your mind. So thank you guys for letting me take a second.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Okay, my name is Angela Jones, Jones. It's an easy one. I just want to say, first off, I want to say thank you to Councilman Hughes and also to Councilwoman Tanner. I'm new to this area. I've been watching what's going on. I've also been investigating. All of you guys investigating, that's a big word, and that's nothing scary. I'm just a new person, want to know who everybody is and how they've been doing things. So as I've been looking through what's been going on, some of it is concerning to me. Some of it's very concerning. And some of it, I'm like, hallelujah, there's some great people up here. I noticed by the presentation about this budget, the majority of it had to do with the police officers. My husband is a retired police officer, and I have many police officers in my family. I love law enforcement. And coming from an area where every year, almost, they would come up with, we're going to increase the budget. I know here you say 35 years, that's pretty amazing, okay? But where I'm from, they come up with increases in budgets all the time. And when they do, they say it's for law enforcement. But they put it in a general fund. And what really concerned me was when the gentleman in the blue came up, and I don't blame any of the people that do the big job, the big paperwork things. I'm sure that they are working very hard. But when asked by Councilwoman Tanner, how do we know for sure that this is going to the police, some of the things that are going to the general fund and things like that? The answer wasn't right away, we can consider that. We can get those safeguards in place. That scares me because that means that they aren't already in place and you're not already thinking about that. That has to be thought of. These police officers, if you bring in a big budget and then you actually don't give it to the little guy, those little guys, those are the ones that need it. They need the money, all right? I know that some of you are working on that. But please, you throw in a big omnibus of a budget and then you don't give all the funds to the right people. I know some of you really want that to happen, okay? You're watching it, you're trying. Don't give up, you keep going for it. People that come here and are looking at what's happening, we're starting to investigate, we're starting to open our eyes, we're waking up. We want this good stuff to happen. I also need to say, in my last 30 seconds, thank you, that helps. We have watched, as citizens, what has gone on in the last few weeks here, okay, with policies not being followed, 45 days before you get the we're here people, whatever, coming into this area and putting their stuff next to kids. And we're reading emails, we see what's being done, and we also see people that are fighting that. We know who you are, we're watching. We know who the patriots are. We know who the strong people are. Okay? Please do what's right for this country, for our kids, and for the police officers. We all love the police officers, but make sure they get the money.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I had a few thoughts. I'm Laura Bean, B-E-A-N. And I've actually really appreciated being here. I've learned a lot that I didn't know. One thing that I was thinking about is this all does some kind of, going back to her comment, come back down to we're living in an age where truly there is a division happening, not just in our city, but in our whole world. In my perception, it seems like people that see the Marxism type stuff that's come into our communities and people that don't see it. And everything is related
Laura,
to that.
I don't mean to interrupt
No, I'm
you, but
coming
we
back to
really
the
need to
budget.
keep on the
I'm
budget.
coming back to the budget. So everything is related to that. When we are having a tax increase, and that includes inflation, it's a tax increase on all of us. It's been astronomical. There's an increase in crime. There's an increase in mental health problems. There's an increase in general sadness and depression among people. I mean, it's just the way it is. So to add on more taxes right now is just, it's unbelievable to me. It's just the wrong time. I mean, maybe some of these one-time things we could postpone, or perhaps create a crowdfunding type option where the people who are so excited about paying extra, and I'd be one of those, could pay and actually donate to that fund. Have we considered that? Also, I don't think anyone is talking about that we don't like our parks and taking them away, or that we don't like our police and taking them away. I just think those comments are interesting. Finally, sorry, I need to wear my glasses. Those one-time expenses, does that mean that next year is going to be, like, for example, $100 million less than, for next year's budget? Hopefully that'll be the $100 million less than for those one-time things. Okay. Finally, also, I'm sure these guys did a great job too, but what about getting a second opinion on the budget? Okay, thanks so much.
So I really need to defend our budget people because they are experts in their field. And we just hired Robert. How long have you been here, Robert? A year and a half? This is his first budget out of Texas. We stole him out of Texas, thank goodness. Dee's been with us, the city, for 25 years. They know what they're doing. They do it well. We run a very lean city compared to most cities, and I just need to defend their work because they are amazing.
Good evening. My name is Ken Schoonover, Schoonover. I spoke at the first public hearing, and I am not going to repeat most of everything I said there. I do want to apologize again to City Manager Leonard for misidentifying him last time. He threw me off when he spoke the words quality of life in his presentation of the budget, and that set off fireworks in my head. Oh, somebody realizes that quality of life is a factor in the budget. And so I'm going to speak again and emphasize the importance of maintaining the current budgeting level for parks, recreation, trails, and arts. It is far too important to the quality of life that you have so successfully to date done in creating that atmosphere in this wonderful city of St. George. Please do not sacrifice that portion of the budget to accomplish what we need, and which I fully support in terms of funding fire, police, public safety. Recreation is far too important a component of the quality of life that we as residents now enjoy. The Parks Department, Shane Moore, Cody, and his crew do an amazing job of maintaining the facilities that we've got on what I think is already a pretty lean budget. Don't sacrifice that. If you do any kind of significant reduction in that level of budgeting, it's going to have a direct impact on the quality of life, the facilities, the programs that we as residents now enjoy. And I mean that impact is that impact is going to be direct, and it's going to be negative. So please, you won't find anybody that supports, I think, police and fire more than I do. Absolutely, that's a priority. But don't sacrifice the programs that are so important to us in the area of parks and recreation. It's hard to quantify that, but let me give you an example. Last year, when the court surfaces at the pickleball complex were deteriorating so quickly because it's used so heavily, and we learned that there wasn't anything in the budget to enable the courts to be resurfaced, the pickleball community stood up. And Madam Mayor, you'll remember the fundraiser that the community arranged, a weekend local fundraiser that delivered $25,000, I think, or was it close to $29,000, to assist in the resurfacing of the courts. That's how important these programs are to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Avery Mortensen, Mortensen. Just my 2 cents. I love the budget. I think with the increase in when she was talking about how everything is costing more now and that we're going to have an increase in depression and increase in crime, well, I will spend $5 a month to help the police officers and to help the parks so that those things, so everyone can have a better quality of life. I think it only combats that problem to increase those funds. So 100% agree with the increase in budget, and I think it will offset all the other problems that people think we're having right now. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments?
Yes, my name is Sean Ammett, AMODT. Just a quick question and clarification. Would this be an appropriate time to talk about the Tech Ridge CDA?
No.
No. Okay. Is that later in the agenda?
That's not on the agenda.
That's not on the agenda this time. Okay.
No.
I was notified that it was canceled, then it was put on this meeting. So just making clear. We'll get together and hopefully there's a meeting later that I can address that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, just really quickly, how this would relate to a budget is I have seen time and time again as CDAs or community development agencies are formed, taxing agencies then turn around and say we have a shortfall in our budget, therefore we need to raise taxes. I hope that isn't the case with you guys. I hope that doesn't happen. For us, our certified tax rate is 0.00022, so very low. I hope we can keep that the same, but you know, you got to do what you do when there's inflation. So, thanks.
Hi, I'm Seth Lefevre, Lefevre. I'm a police officer with the city of St. George, and I've worked here for 15 years. And a lot has changed since then. And I just wanted to go over a few things. I noticed in everyone's campaigns from years ago to recent, one of the first things everyone says in their thing is, I love the city of St. George. We love the culture here. We love how it's been. We grew up here, or I moved here. And we absolutely love this lifestyle. That's large in part to the city councils prior and city officials and city employees keeping up with the quality of life. And it's taken a lot of sacrifices to be able to do that. I was the mountain bike patrol officer for almost 7 years. And one of the things that we did was we didn't go to the hot calls. We didn't go to the domestic violences, assaults in progress, intoxications. What we did is we just focused on quality of life issues. So if you saw an abandoned vehicle on the street, graffiti on the wall, you saw people doing things illegal, just little small stupid things like too many yard sale signs up on a stop sign and made it look really bad. These small little things affected neighborhoods to the point where they become huge flop houses for drug use, for gang violence and things like that. And that adds on and that continues to add on. One of the great things that I love about the city of St. George is that they've focused on quality of life things, things that bring a lot of joy and satisfaction to the community, things that bring people to come here, hence the #1 fastest growing city in the nation. And when we sacrifice those little small things, ultimately down the road, what you're going to ask for is you're just going to get a cement city full of crime. And I too do not like to pay taxes. I think we can all agree with that, correct? But sometimes you trim the fat as best you can, and then at some point you have to be able to squeeze and get that orange juice, right? Like I get comments all the time from people, we appreciate your public service, your safety, we're willing to go out into danger and help people. We completely trust what you do. And they say that to firefighters too, and our 911 dispatchers, and they say that to the parks. We appreciate all the things that you guys do. You guys are so hard. You guys are trained well. And I just think in my head that it's silly that we're questioning people that are in charge of our budget. I mean, we should be able to trust them. They've been very transparent with, as far as I can see, the money where it's going. And all that the city council, and what I'm hoping we would ask for is to be able to keep and maintain the city. If not, we'll become a small Las Vegas. Who wants that? That is literally what will happen, and it's happened time and time and time again. And I, for one, am willing to pay my $5 to be able to do that too. And I hope that we can all appreciate that. Thank you.
I want to mention that Seth just received Officer of the Year. So that is worth applause, yes. He's a great officer, and we had a chief from up north try to poach him with a lot more money, but he said he would stay for now. So thanks, Seth.
My name is Matt Sherman, S-H-E-R-M-A-N. I'm going to piggyback on Seth. He is one of my brothers in blue. I've worked with the city and the police department for 10 years. And within that 10-year period, I've seen this city grow astronomically. I have served in some awesome positions. I've served in patrol, I've served in investigations, and now I'm back on patrol. I've served in various secondary things like being a field training officer. What I can tell you is that we're being pinched. It's a plead, and I appreciate the comments that have been made up here. I know that the council supports the police department, but here's the problem that we've been running into for 10 years. When I came back to patrol, and Johnny Hepler talked about it when he came up, when I first started, nothing has changed in terms of how many officers we have on the unit. After I left investigations, I went to patrol, and I was working graveyard. And we were so short-staffed that at one point in the evening, I had a sergeant, myself, and 2 other officers to cover the entire city. And let me tell you, Pandora's box opened up. We had 1 on the west side, 1 in the central, and 1 on the east with 1 sergeant. And 2 family fights came out at the same time. And if you know anything about police work, family fights are terrifying. We're going into the unknown. We're going into someone else's domain. We don't know what's waiting there for us. Just this week, I'm a father of 5. And we just graduated 1, we just had 1 born. My 6-year-old, just this week, took me off guard and said, "Daddy, I don't want you to be a cop anymore. It's too dangerous. I want you to come home." Here's what I'm going to ask. There's frustration growing. This city does not need to lose good officers because we don't have the money, because we don't have the unit. From investigations to patrol, everything else, we need it. And the problem that we personally are experiencing every single time the new budget year comes up, where are we going to get the money?
In 10 years, I have not seen a plan. I now see a plan, and we're asking the community to help. Not just the police department, but the fire department, all first responders. I support this because I've seen nothing else. If not this, what? If not now, when? Please, please support it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, then I am going to close the public hearing. And come back to you, council, for action on the budget and consideration of a resolution to formally adopt the tentative fiscal year 2022-2023 budget.
I think the last officer actually made an epic point when he said, I support this because I've not seen another option. Amen, brother. That's how I feel. I want to see other options outside of just raising taxes. Of course, if someone wants to raise taxes, they're going to say it's for public safety because as everyone can see, we all support public safety. There's no doubt about that. But why can't we look at other options?
Council, any comments?
Yeah, Mayor, I think that the fundamental disconnect that we're reaching here is that I think that we've looked at all the options. You know, our budget is big and the numbers are, you know, it was explained to us very clearly. Enterprise funds. I have 1 million notes up here, so I can't even find where I wrote it all down. Enterprise funds are 40%. They're 2/5 of the budget, $200 million. Those are nonprofit funds. They're paid for, they pay for themselves. I mean, we can go back through it all, but I think what we're looking at is a balanced budget that has been gone through line by line for 6 months by a professional budget team. We are audited every year by an outside auditor. I thought that was a good point for people to understand, is that our budget team is highly scrutinized every year. We have the lowest taxes, the lowest property taxes. We need to give raises to our police and our fire. Our budget team has basically figured out a really great way to do that, using all sorts of different funds so that they're balancing using some funds that are stable and some funds that are a little unstable so that we make sure that that money comes in. The portion that we want to raise the property taxes is so minimal, but it makes a big difference for our officers and for our fire department. So for me, I'm ready to make a motion on to propose that we pass this tentative budget, because I think that it has been highly scrutinized and that we're ready to move forward with it as a tentative budget. So I will make that motion. I believe that we're doing 4 and 5 separate.
Yes.
Okay. So I will make a motion that we adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget it's for the tentative fiscal year 2022-2023.
Can I make a comment on the motion? That's.
Can we just clarify if you're approving or not approving the amendments that are attached to the budget?
Yes.
That Robert, okay.
Including the amendments. Thank you, Dee.
And this is including property tax raises every 2 years times 3, is that correct?
No. That's the next motion.
Okay.
But I do want to clarify, though, that as part of those amendments is this year's property tax as a tentative, and also the compensation and so forth for the police department would be part of that amendment.
Right, and that's everything that we have on this white sheet, right? That everybody has in front of them, okay.
And I think where my frustration comes in is we've had weeks and weeks and weeks to look over this budget, ask questions to D, Chad, or Robert, go through every line item if we wanted with them, read it over and over and over again like I have, and now we're sitting here debating on if we're going to pass the budget.
I think every single one of us have been doing that.
So to be clear, we're required to pass a budget that is balanced. We can't deficit spend.
Right now.
But this budget includes an increase in property taxes to be fully funded.
It does.
Okay, so that's an important clarification that we need to make sure we understand. And what are the ramifications of that? Because we haven't necessarily approved, obviously we're going to have a truth and taxation hearing on Thursday if we approve the next item.
Yeah.
If that doesn't get approved, then what happens?
Am I correct in saying that's why we're using the word tentative?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
But I just want to be clear, we're passing a tentative budget that includes the property tax increase.
That's correct. So the state law requires, as part of the truth and taxation process, that when we adopt the budget we must adopt it before June 22nd. And when we adopt it, if we are anticipating going through truth and taxation, then we must have the increased property tax within the tentative budget at the time that we adopt it. Because that is then what we then send out notices based upon, what the Washington County Clerk Auditor will send out notices based upon that increase in the budget. And so it has to be part of the budget if you want to move forward with that. And then it still gives you the opportunity between now and August 18th to change your mind on whether or not you want to move forward with that property tax increase.
Which then would require another amendment to the budget.
It would not require an amendment to the budget unless you were to reduce that amount.
Correct.
Yes.
So if we didn't pass the truth and taxation and the tax increase didn't occur.
Right.
It would, which is not uncommon.
No.
We have an amendment in the budget already that we haven't even passed yet, right? So it's not uncommon to amend the budget.
No,
Right.
it's not.
And because that's another part of the concern here is we've been going through this process and talking about and asking questions, but we're also slowly watching the economy implode. And so there's some concern on the council, and I think that's a fair concern. And also, you know, we first started this conversation that truth and taxation and the property tax increase was necessary, but probably not until, we wouldn't need it all until next year. So to say there's not some questions is a little unfair. I'm working through this myself to be able to say, hey, you know, where are we really? And it's fine to just tap the brakes a little and make sure everybody understands what we're getting into here. So I just wanted to make sure that was very clear on this motion. I don't have a problem passing the budget as long as we're all aware of what we're passing, and then knowing that we may have to make some amendments, or we probably will make some amendments, and that passing the budget does not necessarily pass a tax increase, even though that's built into the budget.
Right. Tonight you are passing a tentative budget with that tax increase built into it, but it does not get approved until August 18th.
Good points.
Okay.
Isn't this putting the cart before the horse, though? Why approve something that we know we then have to go and make amendments to?
This is the process that's given to us by the state. As of right now, the council has not indicated that there's an unwillingness to adopt either the certified rate or the rate proposed by staff, and that's still totally up to the council. You could do that tonight. You could do that on August 18th. The council retains all of the authority to make any changes. We can hold as many work sessions between now and then as you want to continue to make the adjustments that you want. Keep in mind what we're looking for is ongoing revenues. That's the main thing that we have the deficit in our budget. Just quickly, when it comes to when we actually see the increase in the property taxes, you would have to pass the rate increase now to be able to see it. And there's a lag time between the collections and when the rate increase goes into effect. So that's the purpose for that. But we are ultimately looking for ongoing revenues. We've I think done a very good job matching the one-time expenditures. We've been very frugal over the years. We've saved cash, like I think we all try to do in our personal budgets. For those larger purchases, we're doing a lot of that. The fire stations, we're paying cash. Many of our large equipment, police vehicles, we're paying cash. It's the ongoing revenues associated with the public safety positions and then the compensation associated with the total public safety budget as well. Those are the things that we have to have ongoing revenues for. If you spend one-time monies on those, you are setting yourself up for big problems down the road, because those one-time monies will eventually be exhausted. And then what do you do? Then how do you pay for those needs? So again, I mean, we've said it earlier, but you have to match those one-time revenues with one-time expenses and ongoing with ongoing. That's where we are feeling the pinch right now. So as was mentioned, if you want to make adjustments, really what we're talking about is the general fund. The enterprise funds, the $200 million, 2/5 of the budget, not going to get you there. Those are restricted funds, so take those off the table right away. On your capital projects, we are absolutely taking the approach on those. We've got some that are needed. Graveyard Wash needs to be built yesterday. Other capital projects, we don't think anything's in there that doesn't need to be built, but we're going to be paying very close attention to the state of the economy. If, for example, like the mayor mentioned earlier, City Hall delayed, we'll delay it again, and we'll delay it again, and we'll delay it again. We'll wait for the right bidding environment. We'll wait for construction costs to come down. We can't wait on Fire Station 10 in Desert Canyons. Another thing has got to get built as soon as possible. So we're looking at each of those projects. We're deciding, you know, on those one-time monies, the urgency of each one, looking for the right bidding environment for those that are lower priority but still needed. So we're taking all those things into consideration, but you take the capital projects off the table and you're basically down to your general fund. Again, you got a $100 million general fund. That's where you're funding all of those services that we've talked about, and it's the ongoing revenues. And that's really where we're in a tough spot. I think we all recognize that. And so focus on the general fund, the one-time revenues that we have available to us. How do we accomplish all of those various goals? And I did want to make another comment. You know, it's been said multiple times tonight, you know, do we look in other places? Have we considered other options for funding these increases and additions to our staff? Absolutely. We cut $17 million in departmental needs from the general fund before we even came to you. $17 million. And you know, as we went through that list, there wasn't a lot in there that you couldn't make a really good argument for needing for our personnel to, you know, whether it's equipment, vehicles. It's just the list is so long of things that, you know, are just held together with baling wire and duct tape around here. And we're always doing our best to save money where we can, to be frugal. That budget is an open book. Please go through it, scrutinize it, tell us where you think we can make improvements. Tell us what expenditures you'd prefer not to see, and we can make those cuts. We can absolutely do that, but we do need some direction from the council as far as which direction you go, because again, this is a policy priority document.
So we have a motion on the table.
I'm going to go back to the comment I was going to make when the motion was just made. So
you did have a comment like 20
yeah,
minutes
so now
ago.
that we've come back, what this will allow us to do now, I think, I know I can speak for myself. I have looked at this budget. I have gone through the budget. I do not have the answers on where to cut if we're going to. I think that our staff does an extremely good job. I really do. And so I don't have those answers. What passing this tonight, what it allows us to do is maybe have further discussions, but it doesn't stop the buck right here. And I think those discussions, if we want to continue to have them and we want to see if we can identify something, this allows us to do that in a work session moving forward. So that was my comment on that. And because of that, I second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Danielle, a second by Greg. This is a resolution calling for a roll call vote. All in favor, starting with Michelle.
Michelle Tanner, nay.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Motion carries 4-1 with Michelle Tanner, a nay. D.
Okay, Mayor and Council. So the next item is a resolution, which it will set the tentative tax rate for fiscal year or for calendar year 2022. And basically what this resolution says is that we have received the certified tax rate from the Washington County Auditor. The certified tax rate is whatever rate would give us the same amount of revenue that we received the prior year. So even though property values are going up, the certified tax rate goes down in order to give us what they call revenue neutral. So our certified tax rate this year actually went down 23.99%. Because values went up, it went down. We're going to get the same amount of revenues. Now, in order to increase the budget for the component of the public safety plan, we are asking that you have us move ahead to set the tentative rate at .000869. And that would generate what Robert showed you earlier, based upon a average primary residential of $566,000. That would be $5 per month or $60 per year, based upon a primary residential home. Now, this just directs staff to move forward with the truth in taxation process, so that we can do the proper noticing, have the proper meetings that are required by the state of Utah. And that would be August 18th. Passage of this resolution does not bind you to make that decision tonight that we increase the tax. Again, we have more time to have these discussions. So, and item number D basically establishes that this is not binding. It's only to get your formal direction to staff to move forward.
Questions for D?
Okay.
I think it's a great explanation, Mayor. If you're ready for a motion, I'll make a motion.
I'm ready.
Okay. Motion to approve a resolution determining the rate of tax for 2022 tax year and levying taxes upon all real and personal property within the city of St. George.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Danielle, seconded by Greg. All in favor? This is a resolution, starting with Danielle.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Can I have discussion on the motion?
Yep.
I would be in favor of approving the motion with an amendment that it be earmarked only for public safety.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'll amend the motion for that.
Greg?
I'll amend my second.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Michelle Tanner, nay.
Motion carries 4-1 with Michelle Tanner being a nay vote. Who's presenting 6? I have Sharon or D.
So this is a resolution authorizing the city pickup of public safety and firefighter employee retirement contributions. At the present time, the city is picking up the employee portion of the retirement contributions. However, there is an increase for next year of 2.59% for the employee portion. And so this is a resolution authorizing the city to pay the full employee portion of those contributions.
Any questions for Sharon? If not, I'm ready for motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize an increase in pickup of public safety and firefighter employee retirement contributions.
Second.
Motion by Michelle, seconded by Danielle. All in favor, starting with Michelle.
Michelle Tanner, aye.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Chad.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Each year, as part of the budget process, city staff reviews the cost to provide services and the fees necessary to help pay for those services. Due to the increase in costs seen to provide services, staff has identified some areas that need the fees increased to assist in covering related costs. These proposed changes are on our master fee schedule, which is in your agenda packet. And I'll just go over a few of those. On page 140, wastewater is increasing their regional residential rate by $1.15 from $11.50 to $12.65 for a total base rate of $20.15. Page 141, energy services is increasing the monthly residential customer base rate by $1 from $18.65 to $19.65. And this is the fourth of 5 years for this $1 increase. Water is also increasing their tier rates as follows: 10 cents for tier 1 through 4, 20 cents for tier 5, 40 cents for tier 6, and 60 cents for tier 7. On page 116 and 117, golf. For Sunbrook, each 9-hole round, there's a $2 increase and a $2.50 increase for all other city golf courses. The cart fee at each golf course is increasing by $2, going from $8 to $10. The driving range fee is going, for the small bucket of balls, it's going from $3 to $4, and the large bucket going from $6 to $8. And we are also proposing increasing the loyalty card purchase from $30 to $40 and eliminating the couples discount. Leisure services, there's quite a few fees in here that are increasing or changing. Youth sports is increasing from $37 to $40 for a resident, and from $42 to $45 for non-resident. The Sand Hollow Aquatic Center is increasing resident rate from $3.50 to $4, and non-resident from $5 to $6. Again, these are proposed increases for the city's fees for services. These will be effective July 1st, 2022, if approved, and staff does recommend approval. Are there any questions?
Questions for Chad?
I don't have a question, Mayor, but I have a comment about the raise from the power department. A lot of us had the opportunity to travel with our power department to Nashville this last week for their annual conference, and it was really inspiring to me to learn what a great power department we have, like how well it's run. I know there were comments earlier, questioning whether it's good for us to stay with public power or whether or not that's, an enterprise fund that we should be divesting ourselves of. But I think that it's been amazing how well they've been able to keep prices down, keep reliability up. It's really, along with water and power, have become, sources of keeping people alive and healthy in our community. And the City of St. George Power Department has done a really excellent job. So that increase really is just covering basic infrastructure, making sure that, we keep our infrastructure safe so that everybody has power. But do you guys remember what Laurie was saying as far as, our times that we've had people like out of power she gave us the number, and now I wish I would have written it down, but in comparison to
very minimal.
Yeah, it's like we win.
Yeah.
I just remember that we had the lowest, numbers.
Most in the country, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was
being able to deliver, super reliable power. And the other thing that Laurie and her team have done really well is to diversify where we get our power. They've done an excellent job. It's been really interesting for me to learn how we buy and sell power. It's a pretty complex system, and they've done a great job figuring that system out and buying and selling power in a way that really benefits the residents and uses the dollars in a really impressive way so that our power has stayed really inexpensive. So just wanted to share that when we were talking about that.
I didn't go on that trip. I was the designated survivor. But I was on assignment from the water department. Fortunately, they all survived. Or unfortunately, maybe somebody...
That's why he's so tan, because he was in the sun.
I was on assignment from the water department to inspect the water levels at Lake Powell. It is low. But there's a lot of water there still. And it made me realize how grateful I am for the forethought of those people who built that dam. And that it is a reservoir that has saved a lot of water in a really bad drought couple of years. And what would we be doing right now without that Lake Powell, which there's still plenty of water to have fun. Anyways, with that, I'll make a motion, unless somebody else has a comment, that we amend the ordinance adopting the various fees and recreational for services and recreational activities. Sorry,
Second.
got that out.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Natalie. All in favor, starting with Danielle.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Michelle Tanner, aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Robert.
Hello again, Mayor and Council. Let me maybe try to close this. So item 8, Robert Myers, Budget Manager. Item 8 is to hold a public hearing and consider adoption of a resolution amending the fiscal year 21-22 budget. So we're in the last part of our fiscal year, and as part of the end of the year, staff goes and does estimates for year-end needs on expenses, on revenues, and we've identified a number of areas in our budget where there's been changes in our project funding or expenses, or we saw that program demand has outpaced the amount that we put in the original budget on the expense side and revenues. And then also we identify what our year-end transfer will be for one-time funding for future needs. As part of my presentation tonight, there are 20 amendments included in tonight's packet, and so I'll walk through those amendments tonight, and if council has any questions, please let me know. So first, just starting off, the first item is to reallocate $9,000 to offset an increase in the fireworks cost for the 4th of July fireworks show. Our supplier has seen an increase in shipping costs and tariffs from China, and so that's a cost we'll be passing on to us to
Is that
provide.
the only place you can get fireworks? China? Probably.
I'm not sure. Sorry, no good answer for you on that, but probably.
They probably buy them from
Those are also
China.
coming from China.
Yeah.
But we've seen a cost increase there, so we're requesting to reallocate funds from our planned year-end transfer to our capital project fund to help support that. So that's the first amendment. The second item is to increase the community development budget by $20,000 to pay for additional plan review services. As you know, they've been incredibly busy this year with permitting, and so we've seen additional revenues and additional expense, and they've also been short-staffed with vacancies, and so we're asking to add an additional $20,000 in funding there to help pay for the additional plan review services to get them through the end of the year. The revenues from building permits will offset that increased cost. Item 3 is to reallocate $82,000 in funding to cover late billing for the police department for our records management system called Spillman. So the county runs that software for all the entities in the area, and last year they had a disagreement on the billing amount, and so they ended up billing us late for that. And so this fiscal year we actually made two payments for our annual Spillman costs, and so we don't have enough money in the budget to just absorb that cost, and so we're asking to increase that. We'll offset that increase by decreasing the year-end transfer amount for our one-time capital needs. Item 4 and 5 are for our golf courses in the amounts of $24,000 and $52,000. The first item is to add additional funding to offset costs in our equipment maintenance costs and our landscape maintenance costs. So we've seen increases in parts shipping costs of 30 to 40%. We've seen increases in our maintenance costs from the different materials they use for the turf to keep that up to snuff of upwards of 75% in the cost. And so we need to increase our budget to afford those costs and to be able to make it through the end of the year. Those cost increases will be offset by increases in revenue that we've seen green fees and cart fees. And so that would be the increase in offsetting the cost. Item 6 is to add funding in the amount of $30,000 to increase the cost of seen for transportation for the Ironman World Championship event that was held this past May. So as part of our agreement for that event, our sponsorship cost is to pay for the transportation related to that event. The cost came in much higher than we anticipated due to higher fuel costs and also due to higher driver costs. And so we will need to add additional funds to the budget to pay for that. Greater Zion will be paying $17,000 of that increase, and then we'll pay the difference by reducing the year-end transfer amount. And so we'd be requesting to amend the budget by $30,000 for that. Item 7 reflects the transfer of funds for increases in part-time wages for our park staff. So this year in the 22 budget, we plan to increase park staff part-time wages to help with their retention and recruitment problems that they were seeing, particularly, again, in their part-time area. We budgeted for that money in our department and transfers division, so kind of our central location within the budget, to wait to see what the real need was in those areas when we got to the end of the year. And so we've identified what those needs are. It's $135,000 in additional costs that we saw in our part-time, and so we're asking to just transfer those funds that were planned in the budget to pay for that. And we budgeted $200,000 for those increases, so we came in and we saw savings in that area. Item 8 reflects our projected year-end transfer to our capital project fund based on the year-end performance of the general fund. The adjustment is to transfer one-time funds in the amount of $17.8 million to be used towards one-time needs identified in our Safe St. George plan, and then also for our one-time needs in future years. This transfer amount is higher than typically seen in the budget, and that's due to the performance we've seen in sales tax. Every month we've seen double-digit increases in sales tax, which is just not typical. And so because of that, we saw a significant increase in our sales tax revenues over the original budget. We've also seen a number of savings in our budget from capital projects, again, that are not going to be able to happen this year because of supply chain issues. We were just talking to Joe and Mark earlier, and well over 20 vehicles that we had included in the 22 budget that were on order are just not going to make it now. They're going to be pushed into 23. So we've just got a large number of things that'll be rolling into next year's budget. And then also there's just a number of vacant positions that occur every year, and so as we see those vacancies, that's savings in the budget that we're able to transfer for one-time uses in the next year's budget. Item 9, 10, and 11 are related to increases in the cost for parks programs, including tennis and pickleball and youth programs and softball. Items reflect increases seen from inflation on the cost of goods and higher program demand. For instance, in our parks program at the rec center, we've seen an increase in demand, and the way that those agreements are set out is that the instructors get 70% of the revenue they get that the city raises from each participant. And so as additional participants have enrolled, we've seen a higher payout for those instructors. And so we need to add funding to the budget for that as part of items 9, 10, and 11. Item 12 is an increase in the construction cost for Fire Station 10 in the amount of $50,000. Construction material costs have come in higher than the original budget. And so we're requesting to amend the budget for that amount. That amount will be paid for within the police impact fund and also the fire impact fund for that increase. Let's see. Item 13 is to add funding in the amount of $28,000 for the initial architectural and engineering design costs for Fire Station 10. As we anticipate to construct Fire Station 10 in the 23 budget, we wanted to go ahead and start the process of preparing the design work for that, and so we're requesting to add funds for that start of that work. Funding for that work will come from fire impact fees. We've seen an increase in that area in this year's over the original budget estimates, so we'll be able to use that to offset that addition. Item 14 is to adjust the CDB budget based on the final anticipated program and COVID-19 expenditures during fiscal year 22. We had increases in support provided to nonprofit service programs such as the Dove Center, Family Support, Memory Matters, and Friends of Switchpoint. And so funding for this request would be from additional CDBG grant funding and also by savings that we saw in admin program costs. And so we'll move around those funds to absorb those cost increases. Item 15 is to increase funding for the Ledges Fish Rock Park project based on an increase seen in the construction and materials costs for the project in the amount of $130,000. This project includes 3 acres of park improvements, including 4 pickleball courts, a small playground, and landscape pathways and pavilion. Funding is proposed to come from an increase in the park impact fees that we've seen this year, so that'll help support that increase in cost. Item 16 is to add funding for drainage study along I-15 that was started in 21 but rolled into fiscal year 22. The project was to identify storm drainage infrastructure deficiencies along the interstate. Staff request to add funding in the amount of $28,000 to fund the study for the expense side that occurred in 22. Funding for the study will be offset by UDOT's contribution towards the project. Item 17 is to reallocate funding in the amount of $460,000 for the remainder of smaller project repairs related to the city's drainage system from the August 2020 large storm event. So in 21, we did a lot of the larger repairs, but then some of the smaller repairs happened during this year's budget. Some of those repairs include wall repair at the Red Cliffs Drive at 2200 East, culvert repair at 100 South at I-15, catch basin repair at River Road at 2050-30 South, and Gabion basket repair at Dixie Drive Bridge. Funding is available from unused funds from the 1130 North Drainage Improvement Project. Item 18 is to pay for the city's remaining portion of the $253,000 for the River Road widening, Riverside Drive to 1450 South project. That was completed during fiscal year 21. UDOT ran that project and had federal funds, and so when there's federal funds, there's a long audit period and a long closeout process, and they've identified that we owe a little bit more money to help pay our portion of that project. So that's $253,000. That'll come from reserves within the Transportation Improvement Fund. Item 19 is to increase the insurance budget by $41,000 based on estimated claims activity this year and increases we've seen in our insurance premiums. That will come from existing revenues within that fund. And then item 20 was a change in our funding source for a project. So our 3000 East widening 1580 to the south to Seg Miller Road project had more funding in it from our transportation improvement funds because it's a drainage project and it's related to new growth. It's eligible to use drainage impact fee funds. We have got more money in there than we anticipated, so we'd request to change that funding source to drainage impact fee by $430,550. And with that, that's the 20 amendments. Sorry to take so long to walk through them, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
It's a lot of work.
Questions for Robert? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
It is a public hearing.
Oh, it is a public hearing. That's right.
And Robert, just to clarify on the golf, so that's all user funded.
Yes, the changes are all user funded.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
So now I will open the public hearing for anybody who has come to comment on the amendments for the fiscal year 2021-22 budget.
It's on the agenda. If you look through the packet at the city site, it is part of the packet. If you go online to the agenda, the full packet's right there every meeting. So it's super easy. I refer to it all the time. That's what I'm looking at up here.
Yeah, we all just, if you go to the agenda, it's everything he just said is in there. So he doesn't have it on a PDF or anything, I'm sure, to throw up on the screen, but we've all seen it. So anyway, going to open the public hearing. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Come back to you, council, for a motion.
Make a motion to approve consideration resolution to review and approve amendments to the fiscal year 2021-22 budget.
Second.
Motion by Natalie, second by Danielle. All in favor, starting with Michelle.
Michelle Tanner, aye.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Adam, who's doing this one? Because Kyle's not here. Oh. Captain Minnick.
I'll preface that with I've been promised that anything legal Tawny's going to talk about.
Okay.
So I think it's number 9 is for the approval of it's called a Trimble device. It's a 3D scanner, a laser scanner. What this will be used for is any major incident crime scene, any major car accidents, any major event. This device can be used, and it takes thousands of photographs. So if we had this room, we'd set it up here. It takes thousands of photographs, laser measurements, and at the end of that, what you have is a 3D or a 2D, depending on what you choose, rendering of whatever the scene is you're looking at. So it allows for our prosecutors, for defense, for others to look at what was laid out where, how, when, in 3D. So I don't know if you have other questions about the technicalities of it. it's a device that we've needed for a long time. It's a device that when we need it, we call the state, and it takes them about 4 hours to drive from Salt Lake City down here to come and do it. Our most recent homicide, we utilized this product, and again, we had to wait 4 hours for them to get here. When, we're far enough away, our city's growing fast enough. It's just something that we're really passionate about, and I hope you'll look into.
Can I add to that? So this is an interlocal agreement between multiple Washington County law enforcement agencies. St. George is the biggest and will use it the most, and so we have the bulk of the cost. But it's paid for by Washington County. We reimburse them.
I have a weird question about that agreement, just because of other agreements we have with other cities. So when it comes to repair, fix, are they all going to be responsible to come in and repair and fix, or is it going to come back to St. George City? Because that's how some of those other agreements work, is we're funding some of those repairs, even though we're sharing some of these nice things.
My understanding is it's based on a cost sharing for how much you'll use it. So since we'll use it more, we would pay more for the repairs, but they all would have to
They'll
contribute.
all chip in something. Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions for Captain Minnick or Tawny?
I'm just curious, does it require a lot of training or is it very simple to use?
So yeah, there will be several users who will have to go and be trained on it. It is pretty extensive training, and we'll select a few people to do that. And with that comes the ability to testify to it in court and other hearings as well. So yeah, there will be a portion of that training, but that is also included in the overall cost.
Okay.
I think we pay for it up front, but would you say that there's cost savings on the back end having this?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, this last homicide, we had four and a half hours. You had my detective unit sitting, waiting, because we can't go in, we can't work. You take one incident, we've already paid for it. So yeah, the cost savings are going to be tremendous. And not just that, the design that comes out of this, you can show trajectories, you can show placements, you can show distances, you can show, it's amazing. And I wish that, we had somebody that we could show you here. It's not just the cost, but the ability to go into court and be able to testify that this is what's happened and be confident that we have the right evidence to support whether somebody did or didn't do something is going to be, you can't put a value on that.
Well, with that alone, I would like to make a motion that we approve a resolution entering into the interlocal agreement between the City of St. George, Washington County, Washington City, and Hurricane City to purchase accident and crime scene reconstruction equipment.
Second. Motion by Greg, seconded by Michelle. All in favor, starting with Danielle.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Michelle Tanner, aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Tawny.
Okay, I was asked to look into getting additional cyber insurance for the city. The city currently has a $2 million policy through the Utah Local Government Trust. We went out to we had the local government trust go out to the insurance market. They got a quote for an additional $2 million layer on top of that for cyber insurance, and that would be for $157,000. It would begin July 1st and go for 1 year. That $2 million is an aggregate. There are various things that it covers and could be included in that, from breach response, notification, business interruption, cyber extortion, data recovery loss, fraudulent instruction, funds transfer fraud, telephone fraud, computer hardware replacement, reputation loss, invoice manipulation. So there's several things that could add up to that $2 million aggregate if we ever needed it. And I just went to a public safety conference 2 weeks ago, and the representative from the state's SIAC, the information, I don't even know it's SIAC. Anyway, it's the joint group that does the federal, state, and local governments. They get together and they share information about cyber and other crimes. And one of the things that they said was that cyber extortion, especially they're targeting local governments because they figure local governments aren't protecting their data as well, especially when people went remote. And so they're trying to find ways to extort the data. And what they do is they come in and they lock up your data, and then they ask you to ransom it for a certain amount of money. And that just happened recently with one of the cities up north in Utah. This will help us because they'll have experts that can come in and help us with that. But cyber extortion, they said, increased 518% just in 1 year. So the average ransom claim right now is $5.3 million in order for you to be able to get your data back. Well, we only had a $2 million policy. So this will give us an extra layer that hopefully we never have to use, but that's what insurance is for, in case we ever have to use it.
So these guys will pay your ransom, or they'll say we're going to do such a good job that they'll never get that, or what? I mean, what are we ensuring here?
So they will provide resources to help us. They will pay some claims, yes. But the cyber extortion is limited to $750,000 of that $2 million. And we have a $750,000 layer right now in our current property policy. So we'd have $1.5 million if we had cyber extortion. But if we had a breach, then they'll pay more, so there are different things. They could bring in experts that would help with forensics, trying to identify who hacked us. They've got PR folks. They would help us to navigate notification. The notification laws are different in every state, and so these companies have attorneys that know what the law is in each state for notification. So if we had somebody whose data got stolen or breached that lived in Nevada or Arizona, they would know what the notification requirements were for those. So they're experts in this area.
This is happening so often and on such a large scale that many insurance companies are no longer willing to provide any type of coverage at all. We're actually quite fortunate to get this bid.
I'm ready for a motion, council.
I guess it's probably important also to share that our tech teams are also working overtime to protect us from this, and they're doing a good job. So I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we approve a resolution authorizing the purchase of excess cyber insurance.
Second.
Motion by Danielle, seconded by Jimmy. All in favor, starting with Jimmy.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Michelle Tanner, aye.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Motion carries. I have no appointments to boards or commissions. Any reports? Michelle? No. Natalie? Greg? Jimmy? Just Lake Powell is great.
Very good.
Oh,
Don't forget, we've got another agenda.
yes, we do. Why did you remind me?
Well, I saw
We-
people
we
packing
can
up. I
still
didn't want
do-
anybody to
we can
get
still
too
do
excited thinking they could
reports.
leave yet. We're almost there, but we got to do the RDA.
Danielle, any reports? Just,
No, I really do. On Saturday at the Electric Theater, they're showing the Alice Street documentary at 7 p.m. It's free to the public, and it is...
Mike.
Oh, sorry. It's the documentary called Alice Street, 7 p.m. at the Electric Theater this Saturday. It's the artists who did the mural on the art museum. It's a documentary about them. So that's free to the public, and yeah, that's all. Oh, well, actually, I mean, did I already tell you guys that I went down to the recycle
Yeah, you
plant?
did.
Okay. Just it's really
and sent
great.
pictures.
Yes. Okay.
All right, do we need to adjourn out of this meeting or just, okay. I need a motion to adjourn out of city council and go into our neighborhood redevelopment agency meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Danielle, second by Greg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we're now in our Neighborhood Redevelopment Agency meeting.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'll be really quick. So item 1 on tonight's RDA agenda is to hold a public hearing and consider approval of a resolution to adopt the 22-23 RDA budget. The city's RDA budget for fiscal year 22-23 totals $5.2 million and includes funding for the 5 active project areas, including the Dixie Center EDA, Fort Pierce CDA 1, Fort Pierce CDA 2, Central Business District CDA, and Mill Creek CDA. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Robert? If not, I'll open the public hearing for anyone who has come to comment on the RDA for the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Come back to you, Council, for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget for the St. George Neighborhood Redevelopment Agency.
Second.
Motion by Natalie, second by Jimmy. All in favor, starting with Natalie.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Michelle Tanner, aye.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Yeah, I am. Item 2 is on tonight's RDA agenda is to hold a public hearing and consider resolution of amending the fiscal year 21-22 budget. For the amendments identified in tonight's packet, there are 2 amendments that we've included. The first amendment is to increase the budget by $7,500 for the Fort Pierce EDA number 1, and that's due to the fact that we had received additional property tax revenue than we had anticipated, and this is the final year for that EDA, and we're trying to close out that EDA, and so we're increasing the budget by $7,500 to pass along that money onto the participating taxing entities as part of the closeout process. And then the second amendment is for $15,000 in our Mill Creek CDA, and that's to reflect a higher amount paid for economic incentives than we had originally anticipated as part of the budget. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Robert? If none, I will open the public hearing for anyone who has come to comment on the amendments to the fiscal year 2021-22 budget. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and come back to you, Council, for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for the amendments to the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Natalie. All in favor, starting with Danielle.
Danielle Larkin, aye.
Jimmy Hughes, aye.
Greg MacArthur, aye.
Natalie Larson, aye.
Michelle Tanner, aye.
And then I need a motion to approve the minutes from the meetings held on October 7th, 2021 and April 7th, 2022.
Motion to approve the minutes for October 7th, 2021 and April 7th, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy, seconded by Greg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adjourn from the Neighborhood Redevelopment Agency meeting and City Council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Danielle, seconded by Jimmy. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you all.